Hello, everybody. We are about to begin soon. I'm just checking the sound and checking to see if who is there. And let me know in the chat if you're able to hear me. Made a little pop there, but sounds like it's working. So we'll be starting in just a few minutes. See you soon. Stop, stop, stop. All right, so let us begin with today's session. Trying something new here. We're going to talk about consistency and discipline and stifling the need for mnemonic examples because a lot of people are looking for mnemonic examples and it is getting in the way of them doing what is required to get results with these techniques, which is to actually create your own mnemonic examples, or what we like to call in the magnetic memory method world, magnetic imagery. So how do we make the magnetic imagery magnetic? Well, we have to learn how to do it. And there's a real issue with mnemonic examples going on. And it is something that I know the solution for. I know the solution. And thank you for saying hello, Sandra. Good to see you. I hope you're seeing things not mirrored, Sandra. If you could confirm in a chat, that would be good. We're going to try to have things not mirrored, which is going to help us stifle the need for mnemonic examples. Now, I want to know in the chat, if you're here and watching us, if you have this need and what that issue might be. But if you're free of it, we also want to know because it is it is quite an interesting thing when we're together to be able to help each other and share tips. So it doesn't just have to be me having those tips shared. But I wonder if you're hearing me, if you can let me know in the chat. Again, we're trying something new with a new software to make these live chat streams better. And without your input, I don't actually know if you're hearing me or not, but I did all the best tests that I could. And seeing what's happening here, but it's pretty exciting and fun. But we want to make it engaging and know that it's actually working for you. So if you can quickly type that in, that would be great. And we are always moving towards constant progression, towards improvement, making these things better and better for you to make it more engaging, more interesting to watch. And we will be talking about this interesting formula here about going deep and figuring out how that can help you with your mnemonic examples. Sandra says it's loud and clear. Thank you for saying hello. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and where you're at with mnemonic examples. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I'm going to share with you an interesting email that partly gets to the heart of the problem that I received. We'll do a bit of mailbag today as well. But it's so clear to me that there's a certain blindness to mnemonic examples that people have when they are not seeing the examples that has to do with their topic. Why is this an issue? Why is this a problem? Well, first of all, because you don't necessarily need them to be tailor-made to your topic. I know that would be nice. I recognize that that would be nice. But one of the things that I had to do in order to figure out how to make this work for the languages that I was studying, for the philosophical concepts I was studying, for everything that I've had to study and learn and figure out, is I had to just dive in and create my own examples because there was nothing like what I wound up creating through my books for people. It just wasn't there. But there were examples of others doing other things. And I found that it was very hard to peer into this and see, like, why should this work? Why should this bizarre imagery that another person is making work? And the reality is it shouldn't. Because it's the principles that underlie everything. And it's the deep understanding of what's happening that enables you to move from example to actual practice and technique, and then improving your practice. So we better just start at the beginning and think about what mnemonics are and what they aren't. So mnemonics are a way of taking information you don't know and then associating it with information that you do know. And that information can range from everything to your home, to your favorite pop culture TV shows, to whatever it is, whatever it may be that you're familiar with, music, novels, and so on. And it is really, really important to understand that it's about association at a deep level. And your ability to associate is what's going to make the difference at the end of the day. And if you're not practicing association, if you're not learning what association is all about, then and creating the actual examples by investigating your mind, cultivating what is going on in your mind, and applying it to information that you want to learn, that you actually want to learn, not shopping lists like most of the memory books teach, but things that actually are going to improve your life and quickly, then it's going to be in a void. It's going to be a bit lost. Now, if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up and type in the chat box where you are in the world and say a little bit about where you're at with mnemonics so that we can help you further if you are indeed interested in help. But the core thing that we're trying to solve here is that mnemonics work because you're tapping into information you already know. That means that it's not work. You're actually trying to evade work and turn it into fun, turn it into engaging your mind at a neurochemical basis in ways that make it so powerful and things so memorable. And it may take a bit of practice. It may take some fumbling around. And one of the ways to fumble is to go in search of mnemonic examples forever and ever and ever. And people look for them as an evasion of just settling down and figuring it out. You should need 1 to 10 examples max, and then you should be good to go. And this is very, very clear. There's not really great evidence that all the mnemonic examples under the sun is really helping anybody when you could just jump to the chase and get it sorted for yourself, so you're creating them yourself, so that you're understanding the principles that are underlying it. And so one of the signals of just how important this is in the emails that I get, and I get so many emails. With this new configuration, I've actually set my computer a bit too far away, so I'll just move it over here a little bit. But it is unbelievable to me, some of the barriers that people place in front of themselves that they absolutely do not have to place in front of themselves. Dee Dee's here from Los Angeles, California. Didn't you say, though, that you should practice memorizing a deck of cards? What's the difference between practicing with cards and a shopping list? Great question, Dee Dee. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, because that is actually wonderful. Because memorizing cards and memorizing a shopping list are two different things. And there is actually a reason to memorize shopping lists that we'll cover here in a second. But excellent question. Thank you very much for that. Thumbs up to Dee Dee. If you haven't hit thumbs up for me, put thumbs up for that question, because it's really, really important. But this setting of barriers in front of yourself and searching for examples and so forth is really there's never enough examples to satisfy that need for examples. And believe me, I also have the need for examples, and it is only satisfied by being able to create them myself and to understand the principles behind them. And this email is really interesting along those lines, because there's another kind of craving, and that is to know why, and that is to know how, and it is to know what, and it is to just, it's the need for answers that are given only through practice. So the number one qualifying factor for this skill is the willingness to dive in and practice and use the techniques. And the mysteries will only be solved in that. This is the DOC principle of the magnetic memory method, which is doing is the origin of confidence, and it's the origin of courage, and it's the origin of consistency, and it's the origin of everything that you would need. By the way, when it comes to discipline and consistency, there's a link below that I hope you're seeing on the screen for a free webinar that we're doing. If you want to join it, I'm going to be sharing 5 books that have helped me develop discipline and consistency. They are the 5 books that have really, really made the hugest difference, and I'm going to unpack the 5 secrets in them. Now, if you were in last month's webinar, you know that there's more than 5 secrets to be unpacked, and when people are engaged, then we unpack more of those secrets. So if you'd like to join in there, there's also a very special list of more books, the ultimate list of all the books that will come to mind. And I have a pretty good memory. So when we did the last one, there was over 100 resources on the gift for webinar attendees. So if you'd like that, go to magneticmarymethod.com/DC. If you can't type now because you're driving or whatever you may be doing, I don't know if you drive and listen to YouTube live streams, but you can remember DC because it's an abbreviation for discipline and consistency. So that's coming up. Now I want to, Emerson's here. Emerson says, France won the World Cup. Just saying. I'm at work. All right, great. Thanks for that, Emerson. Thumbs up. And really appreciate you saying hello, even if you have to get back to work. And wow, congratulations, France, for winning the World Cup. Awesome. Great. How will we remember this? Well, we'll see France in a big cup. Emerson says, I'm struggling with learning French. I have a mental block, but I may have broken through the block. Excellent, excellent. If you care to share more, that would be awesome. If not, let me know personally via email if I can help. Emerson is in the Magnetic Imagery Method Masterclass and Mastermind, great practitioner and person who definitely does these kinds of things that we'll be talking about today. But I want to get to Dee Dee's question about practicing memorizing cards and why that's different than a shopping list, and why that you can use a shopping list in a way that is actually authentic, that I've never seen a memory improvement book talk about. But maybe I will put it in a future memory improvement book just to clean this up. So basically, shopping lists are a way of practicing your memory. There's no doubt that it's a legitimate memory exercise. And I sort of speak about it in the ways that I do to illustrate a principle, which is that when you really want to learn these techniques, you need a quick victory, right? You need to astonish and amaze yourself. Now, if you're astonished and amazed by food that you already know and like, then great, it worked, right? That you can remember food that you already know and like. That's great. But usually what these things in the books do is they show you a bunch of foods and items that have nothing to do with you. It might not be shopping lists. It might just be this random shopping list, like chicken, pencil, truck, whatever, right? It's just random stuff. When in life do you just have to memorize random stuff? You never do. Never. Rarely. Unless you're a memory competitor, right? How many people are ever realistically going to become memory competitors, right? If you are, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Then that is a skill for competition. Memorizing random stuff that will not improve your life, except for if you get a prize, maybe your ego gets a boost and so forth. Great. Nothing wrong with this. But it's not the legitimate path to memory techniques that are going to serve you to memorize information that will improve your life. And so the dopamine spike that you might get from some other dude's shopping list or list of random items is minuscule, minor, nothing compared to the dopamine spike, the quick victory that you will get if you would just sit down and memorize information that will improve your life, right? And continue to do this. So those random lists in most of the memory improvement books, they have maybe a minimum little effect. And it's hard for some people to tie that connection to information that will improve your life. I've always just said, let's cut to the chase and memorize the information that will improve our lives, like German vocabulary, for example. So we're celebrating the 6th year anniversary of that book. If you're not on my email list, you missed the giant celebration. Sorry about that, but we had a great time, and it was flashy. A flash sale from courtesy of the Flash. And what is so extraordinary about it is that it helps those people get results because the mnemonic examples that are there, and there are many, they're going to give you direct access to the information that will immediately improve your life, which in this case is German vocabulary. However, you should be able to read that book and understand how it connects to any language, even though in some other languages there will be maybe some little variations, like Chinese will have some different steps, but very minor ones. The point being is that this is information that immediately improves your life. So the dopamine spike is much higher. Bang, 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 and it's much more profound, much more long lasting. It's much more inspiring. It gives you more discipline. It gives you more courage. It gives you more confidence, and so forth. And it'll help you get through these blocks that one may experience at different times. Because let's face it, there are going to be blocks that come. People plateau, I've plateaued, and so forth. Now, back to What you could do with shopping lists that's a little bit more legit is shopping lists in the language that you are studying. So now you're following the principles of association that we talked about earlier, that upon which all memory is based. You're taking the foods that you really, really like, not the list in the book, but the foods you really, really like: carrots, chicken, fish, celery, whatever, right? Onions. And then you're learning the words in the language that you're studying. And bang presto, you're going to get a much bigger dopamine spike when you're at the grocery store and you're not looking for onions, but you're looking for Zwiebeln if it's German, right? It's just that simple. And it's a much bigger win that encourages you to keep going and going. And then, of course, you can build on those foundations. Now, about playing cards, why playing cards are profound is, first of all, you don't have to memorize playing cards, but the reasons why you might want to do so are multiple. First of all, it's a good way of getting a little bit more than half of a 00 to 99 for your major method. Ultimately, you want a 00 to 99, but it'll give you 52. Actually, you can get 54 if you want to do the jokers, but I don't necessarily recommend the jokers. I was actually looking through one of my memory journals earlier today. Actually, I'll share this with you. Sorry to be off the screen here for a second, but I was looking through one of these old ones, and I found this page because I always track my records here, what I'm doing. And I was doing a drill, and I said, very tired, tried going fast in a disinterested style, only did 12 cards, hard to gauge, approximately 78% accuracy in 30 seconds, ending in immediate testing, had not removed the jokers, which caused a blip when encoding one of them. When initially encoding one of them. So, you can have the jokers in there, but I normally take the jokers out of the deck, and so I had the jokers in there, and it created this blip, and it sort of threw the whole thing. But I was really super tired. Sometimes I only just have a few minutes to practice my memory, but it's a great way of just taking a few minutes to practice your memory and thinking, what can I do in 30 seconds right now just to get a bit of memory practice in? It's really, really profound. By the way, if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. If you have questions, that would be great to know. And we're talking about the need for mnemonic examples. And this is where cards are also important, because if you will just sit down and even do 10 cards, encode them, then you'll have part of a 00 to 99. And then you'll have created mnemonic examples that form the basis of creating endless multiple examples. But the problem is that if you don't get started somewhere as soon as possible and you're working with shopping lists, those are mnemonic examples that you're using once and once and once and once and once. But the thing with a 00 to 99, whether it's applied to cards or not, any sort of major system, major method-based thing, is that you're going to be able to use those mnemonic examples again and again and again. And then you're also going to be able to use them in such a way that you can improve them over time, because mine change over time. My 00 to 99 is constantly in refinement and gets better and better and stronger all the time. Peggy's here. Peggy, hello. Thank you. I got your emails this morning. Some of your images didn't quite show up. I haven't had a chance to respond yet, but I appreciate it. And also great to see you in the German Vocabulary Memory Challenge. Fantastic. Your first one there was what was it? Gesamtkunstwerk. Great. I remember it. See, this is why it works. We work together. We have mnemonic examples. I remember you were talking about Wagner. I didn't memorize your mnemonic example, but I do remember what the word was. And my first word from the first day of the challenge was Übeltäter. So the techniques work. Great that you're here. Let me see what you're saying, though. Peggy says, I'm struggling with doing anything else on my to-do list except establishing 26 ABC memory palaces. Well, it's great that you've done this. Let me know a little bit more about your struggle if I can help. Peggy gives some nice emoticons there. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And also, I really appreciate you being a part of the challenge. And we're hoping we're doing an asynchronous one this time with the latest book re-release. But it's great. We're seeing some people, they're requesting the vocabulary builder that you got with that. And I mean, basically what you're going to do is you're going to dive in and do these things. And you've got 30 days of my mnemonic examples there from German, and you've got many examples of the other participants, and it's just fun. It's fun. It's fun. And now we can compound the value of it all as more people go through it again and again. I'll be there to help. And by the way, would someone let me know? Are you seeing this link below me? I've just starting a new thing. For some reason, I can't see my actual stream. But if you're interested in joining us on discipline, on consistency, magneticmarymethod.com/DC. This is a webinar that is on software I really do know how to use well. And if you've been on one of the webinars before, you know these can be very powerful. We're going to talk about the 5 books that have helped me the most when it comes to developing discipline and consistency. I'll share with you the 5 biggest tips. Of course, we get into more if you're there. And just go there. You can register your seat, and I will have a mega list of other resources, all things that will help you so that you can stop seeking other things. And this is different than last month's. It's a new one, and I really look forward to getting that to you if you're a mature learner who really wants to get things sorted and buckled down. So Dee says, this is continuing our shopping list playing card conversation here. Thanks, I'm new to this. I'm trying to learn Japanese by using PAO to memorize words, and so I've matched a person to every Japanese sound. Kobe Bryant, e.g. Ko is Kobe Bryant, right? Is this smart or too formulaic? Well, first of all, congratulations. You're taking action. You're making your own mnemonic examples, which is what you need to be doing so that you get better and better and better at it. I don't know what exactly you're doing with the PAO there. There's a lot of frustration and confusion around the terminology, which we're working in the magnetic memory method world to consolidate into a singular vocabulary that our community can use, because PAO doesn't have to be PAO. It can be flexible, it can be useful, and the more you understand the underlying principles, the more you're going to get out of them, the more you're going to milk them for your personal practice. This is why magnetic memory method is never about systems like a lot of other people teach, but it's about understanding the methods and the principles so you craft your own systems based out of your knowledge that erases and eliminates the ignorance of what one has about one's own memory, because it's your memory. And we're going to get to this email because it's all about this. And it's really important to understand that, because that's what you're going to do no matter what in order to master these skills. And you're going to become your own memory guru, your best teacher, because you're the only one who has your memory. And these are the principles, these are the values that we have in the magnetic memory method world. And we teach you how to be free of seeking the others, but also continually enriching yourself with the knowledge in a way that is satisfying. So you satisfy that your journey is satisfying. Rather than constantly wondering and being in mystery, you're actually doing it through action. And then the conversations we have here on these live streams, like my university office hours, they're much more meaningful and enriching. So I'm glad you're on the journey, Dee. And ultimately, I don't know if it's smart or formulaic, other than it's absolutely genius that you're on the path and you're doing stuff. And Ko for me was Ken, right? Because Ke is also one there in the hiragana. It was Ken doing cocaine. So I actually have a drawing of this in the book that I haven't released yet on Japanese hiragana, but it's in the video course of how to memorize hiragana, which is actually it's a demonstration course in the vocabulary course of the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. So if you don't have that, then you may want to get it so that you can go through a number of examples for the hiragana, and we also talk about how you can reproduce it for the katakana, and then we also talk about it and its application for the kanji. And again, this is about you setting yourself up with your own systems because you understand the methods and the principles, and there's a sufficient number of examples there that should absolutely quench anyone's thirst for any language if you can just get around the idea, the understandable idea that, well, this isn't exactly for my language, but I will have the discipline and sit down and just have a look at this and take some notes and then see how that applies to my own language. And hey, if I have a question, maybe I'll ask it, and I'll ask it in the elevated way that mature students do, which is to write a description of what it is that you've done and where you're stuck, and then have some images there of your memory palaces and a description of your magnetic imagery, and then we can diagnose what's actually an option for you, a strategy for you, rather than hunting around in the dark with general questions that never lead anywhere because you're not on the path in the first place. But you are on the path. So what I would say, DD, is you want to try and find formulas when you can, but always be flexible. Okay, be flexible to exceptions to rules, because the world is full of exceptions to rules. That's just the way that it goes, right? But the more that you know the rules, the more you're prepared to deal with the exceptions, and you even have knowledge and understanding of what exceptions are going to be permissible and what aren't. And this is a very, very powerful thing indeed. Barry's here from Idaho. Idaho. Thank you, Barry, for being here. Really great to see you. Barry says, after having my 0099 list for a couple of months, I find it pretty easy to swap out images for those more meaningful to me. That's exactly right. Thank you, Barry, for saying that. Barry says he's seeing the link. Great. Thanks for confirming. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and if you have questions or comments. And, you know, this community is about us helping each other as well. So I really appreciate Barry for sharing that. It's exactly the case. Like your 00 to 99, you can switch things in and out, compound them, change them, and so forth. So, I mean, I literally do this all the time. I used to have for Ace of Diamonds a maid, just a generic maid. And it just doesn't work nearly as well as the motto guy for Mad Magazine, right? He's much better. Same general principle, and you know what's even better? I didn't have to get rid of the maid. I just dress him like a maid, right? And it's just that simple. It's that simple. And what's cool about it is that the maid, so this is PAO, right? The maid always did something. She's like mad or whatever, and she hits something with a mop, but mop is actually 9 of diamonds, so it like gets messy. But now, because it's actually a real figure that I have seen with my own eyes rather than an abstract made, it's the mad guy, Alfred Newman I think is his name. I never looked up what his name actually was, but something like that. And he's now dressed as a maid, and it's just much more specific, so he can still have some sort of cleaning implement, which is not a mop, but it's very specific. And that mop used to be a generic mop, but then I realized it's the Fantasia mops that come to life. Or are they brooms? I don't know. It doesn't matter. In my mind, it works that they're there, and it's much more specific. So if you don't know Fantasia, go watch it. It's filled with potential mnemonic images. And this is the thing, right? Is that mnemonic examples are everywhere if you just pay attention differently to the movies you watch and the movies you've already watched. So you're thinking mop. Well, what mop? What about those crazy mops from Fantasia, right? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Sandra says, how do you prevent yesterday's links from interfering with today's practice? For example, you linked 3 of clubs to 6 of hearts yesterday. Today, the Jack of Diamonds falls 3 of clubs today. Though the how is that you just practice doing it first and foremost. So congratulations if you're doing that. But let me think if we can come up with just an example in practice. But basically, you just don't let it get in the way. But if you go to magneticmemorymethod.com, let me see if I can find you the link here and post it in our chat. I don't know if I must be allowed to make links, but you got to listen to a podcast episode on the ugly sister effect, which I should come up on page 1 of Google for ugly sister effect, and I do. Also, you'll see some great thoughts on 00 to 99 in this particular thing. I'm loving my new setup. Let's see if I can post links here. Oh, yes, I can. Sweet. So go to magneticmemorymethod.com, link there, Sandra, and anybody else who wants to study this practice. The Ugly Sister Effect is the mega tutorial podcast and discussion posts on what to do with yesterday's links. So it's the fullest discussion there. And there's some really great comments in the discussion post that just blow me away for their ingenuity and their ingenious, and really are part of building the superior discussion community that we're working on about actual practice and the ins and outs of all this, some of the exceptions to the rules and so forth, and you'll find some videos there. But man, that is one of the biggest discussions, and John just talks about some really, really good things there. So look out for John. He's sharing a bunch of mnemonic examples, which is again one of the reasons why I'm sometimes blown away when people say, well, there aren't enough examples. And the reality is is that there's more examples than you can shake a stick at, but a lot of people aren't seeing them because they don't feel like they relate specifically to what they're doing, which is understandable. I get that, but at the same time, if you would actually be on the journey and show the examples you're creating, then we have a much different discussion. And Sandra says, what keeps you from reverting to yesterday's list? Well, go through that material. It'll serve you well. And the first thing is that if yesterday's list is interfering with today's, you are amazing. Like, just congratulate yourself, first of all. That's the best problem you could ever have. What you worked on yesterday is so strong that is now interfering with the first thing. So, or for today. So you technically don't have a problem when that's happening to you, okay? Just understand this as the number one principle. You don't have a problem. What you have is a great memory, and your memory exercise is working. You have confirmation of massive gains, right? You are really, really well established. So now the question just is, well, just to cut to the chase, you should still go through Beginner's Guide to Overcoming the Ugly Sister Effect. But what you really want to do is you want to think about, do I have enough additional memory palaces to practice my cards in, right? As I work out the knowledge of how to deal with this. Because you should be able to just overwrite that instantly, like this. Like, it shouldn't be an issue. And if it is an issue, that's talked about in Beginner's Guide to the Ugly Sister Effect. So definitely check that out. And but just number one thing, not to be over the top or seem like I'm exaggerating the praise here, but it can't be exaggerated enough. Your memory is working. If yesterday's memorization practice is quote unquote interfering with today's, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. What you have is success. And now it's just a matter of coming up with some segmentation and then working towards dealing with the ugly sister effect. So that's there for you. And basically, just keep going deep, right? So keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. Define what's going on, establish the solution, exercise some more, and practice some more. Exercise the solution, that is, right? Establish whatever solution is going to be there, and then continue to do the memory exercise, which is also great brain exercise, and then practice those solutions. So it's really that simple. And you just keep going deep, 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 deep. And so it's a lot of fun. So thanks everyone who's here now. If you haven't said hello yet, type hello in the chat, tap hello in the chat. I think we're going to probably not be using the word type for much longer. Now it's going to be like tap in the chat, or it's going to be Siri in the chat, or whatever. We're going to have to come up with a whole new a whole new way of speaking pretty soon. But I think the flash will still remain flashy. And by the way, I don't have it here, but if you want to get a Magnetic Memory Method cup, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/swag. I'll pop that in the chat for you. I have a very special video for anyone who lets me know that they have a Magnetic Memory Method cup or anything else from the store. And that video will show you how to get yourself going with a pretty incredible, sweet cupboard memory palace. And I'm just going to test this link, make sure that it's working for you. But we certainly like it. People have been posting super chats and all that jazz. That's great. If you want to post a super chat in our live streams, that helps us continue helping you. But I think the better thing is to join the masterclass first. Make sure you're actually getting the training, and then if you want to supplement yourself with some cups and swag or whatever, then you can click that link I just posted there, magneticmemorymethod.com/swag. And if I know through a receipt or ideally a picture of you with either a t-shirt or a sweater or a cup, then I have a very, very special video for you that will show you some things that I'm quite confident no one else has ever taught, and that I use. It's not just about, it's amazing memory exercise using your cupboard and the things in it, but it's also great brain exercise. And part of it was influenced by Lynn Kelly in the Memory Code and the Lukasa. It's a bit more of an elaborate Lukasa, but probably because it's a little bit more elaborate. If you're willing to just put in the groundwork, ooh, I don't want to say the word work. They tell me that people get scared away from that, but we don't worry about that because it's effort, really. Kissing my wife takes effort, and I never let that hard work get in the way of kissing her. So it's like big deal if it takes a bit of effort. The point is that this can be really really helpful, and that's for people who have that cup. And it's I use it all the time, and it's really really great, and it's coming out of the memory code. This is the cool thing when you're in the community, when you're in the dialogue, when you're actually on the path. These ideas just keep emerging, new little techniques, new little angles. People sometimes think, oh, well, there's nothing new in the memory world. This is nonsense. Every person who comes to the memory techniques is new, and it's all new to them. And not only that, but there are new things emerging as more people practice, more people start to share what it is that they do, and they start to create training around it. It's a beautiful thing. This is a thousands and thousands of years old tradition, and it's going to continue being the way that we as a human species survive and keep knowledge rolling. It's very, very obvious to anybody who knows anything about these techniques, and you know, be part of it, and support the people that are teaching you these things. This channel, other channels, be part of the larger mission here, because we are in a changing world. Information overwhelm is becoming harder and harder and harder, and we owe it to the younger generations to maintain our brains as ourselves, as good citizens of the world, as good leaders of our families, etc. We owe it to them, to successive generations, to preserve this tradition. But we also just owe it to ourselves, because we're the ones who have to suffer the pain of not maintaining our brains. And so take care of yourself so you can take care of others. And this is a great way of doing it. Barry says, I had worried about running out of memory palaces, yet I considered recently every place I have stood, walked, sat, driven, traveled throughout the world, and I have over 100 locations listed. Thank you, Barry. That is exactly how it works. There's no end. There's no end. And I'll bet you if you start to go through those locations again, you'll start to see little angles and areas of those locations that you hadn't considered. And you can do sometimes it imaginatively, speculatively. That can be for a lot of people a little bit weaker, but there are options. There's so many options. I think of in Athens, for example, a restaurant and a street corner. And I think of sometimes, well, that restaurant was in the basement, but I know it was in the basement. So what was up above? And as just a little spatial memory exercise, I can craft a space. I may never use that imaginary space as a memory palace, but I can use the concept of it as a way of just an imaginative brain exercise that gets a little bit of mental rotation going on, a bit of spatial memory exercise that has direct application to improving my practice in other areas. These things matter. They do give you the upper edge, and we're always looking for the slight edge. It's part of brain optimization and making sure your brain really, really helps you in your life achieve your goals. And if you don't have any goals, no problem. None of this makes any sense. But if you do have serious goals, if you're a mature learner, if you like mental adventure and you want to be able to rely on your mind at some significant levels, then this is the way to do it. And it's not the only way, but it's certainly one of the most powerful ways. And shout out to Christian. I released that video the other day of me juggling, reciting the alphabet backwards, doing some Sanskrit, some Chinese, and so forth. Then he sends back himself juggling. Next thing you know, I'm doing a commentary on that. Then the next thing, he's rolling coins over his fingers and reciting poetry. Then I recited some poetry while rolling coins on my fingers. And we'd love for you to get involved. Help us make it visual for people, because it's so real. And I've just been chatting this morning with Ollie Richards. I was like, man, we gotta figure this out. Like, me memorizing Chinese lyrics on a previous YouTube live stream, great. Like, it helps make it more visual. But what else can we do? We're always thinking of, like, we know these techniques work, and there's no like real need to rush out and try to prove it or demonstrate it or anything like that, because there's 27 years of the World Memory Championships, going on 28, and then there's thousands of years of tradition documented. There's all kinds of science. We've got, just if we take from Hermann Ebbinghaus till now, like, there's no big rush to go out and create scientific evidence. It's already there. But this is what the world is. New people come and they need different points of access to these techniques. And so we're busy doing all that we can to make it real. But what hasn't really existed, as far as I know, until the magnetic memory method came along 6 years ago with my first book, which we celebrated earlier, and you would have had the opportunity to celebrate with us if you were on my email list. Um, there wasn't really a concentration on somebody really using them in a dedicated manner for languages, at least not in quite the way that I have, to my knowledge. I could be wrong. I'm always happy to be corrected, and some people have shown me parallels, and that's great. Often what they're doing is not really quite parallel, and it's clunky, and they're not really language learners um, to the extent that one would hope. So that's been a huge difference and a really interesting difference. And which isn't to say that this is the only tool that you would want in your language learning journey, but it is a major force, a major power. And you do need the big five of language learning on your side, which is why there's a supplementary book and course called The Ultimate Language Learning Secret. It's why I make sure you know who Ollie Richards is, because he's, I think, one of the best that is out there. He makes things very, very clear. He's helped me personally many, many times refine my own practice, my own teaching, and we have a great friendship in that regard. And so, if you don't know his work well, you should, because it'll help you, because he's the real deal, and that's what we need more of, is more people who are the real deal. So when Christian sent his video of him juggling and so forth, this helps make it more that people can connect with it, right? And because it's so cerebral, it's in the mind. It's really interesting how to visualize it, how to get there. Oh, Christian's here. He says it's been fun. Well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for saying hello. It's really, really important and really good that you did that, and we want to help this grow. Like, everybody has the fantasy of going viral and so forth. I'm not really concerned about these things going viral. What I'm concerned about is making them grow and letting them organically develop, so that more people can see the joy of this tradition, the absolute bliss that comes from engaging with your mind in this way. And yes, you can get the body involved, and it's a brain exercise that is unquestionably superior to anything that you can expect from any other source. I mean, Buzan was teaching juggling a long time ago. I don't know that he ever did any variations of reciting things, but he may well have. I don't know. I haven't read everything under the sun from Buzan. Probably nobody has. He's written so much. But this whole thing of juggling in and of itself, even if you don't add things like Christian and I have been demonstrating, and also Daphne, I haven't heard back from her yet if we have permission to use her video, but she was skipping and doing the alphabet backwards in Greek, and wow, an amazing video. I'm really glad to have had her on board as well and sending that. But it's just obvious that, and well known, how good juggling is, and all sorts of playing piano, playing guitar is good for the brain. It's a kind of bilingualism, in a sense. It's the bilingualism of the muscles, of muscle memory, and so forth. And the more you can add on to these things, the more that you're going to give yourself more brain health. And meditation, when you can add that into the mix, we know. I'm rereading Andrew Newberg's How Enlightenment Changes Your Brain. And it's just incredible, like the brain scans and what's happening in terms of quieting the mind in these different areas, and the chemicals that are involved that make you feel really good. If you're struggling with discipline and confidence and you're not feeling so great, well, listen, there's ways to get that sorted. And it might not happen overnight, but we know a great deal now about what it takes. And that's what this new webinar is all about, what it takes for discipline and consistency towards achieving these things. And he has lots of ideas in how enlightenment changes your brain that are very, very useful. And there's more. And the question always is how do we edge more people into actually taking action long enough, consistently enough, to get the results that start to create the brain chemical changes, the brain structural changes that lead not just to being able to remember stuff, but also to feel blissful, to feel better. and to be better so they can contribute more to the world, to be more of the world, of the conversation in the world. And believe me, I had to go through it myself. I remember being in therapy. I've been through it. And I remember that guy, one in particular, telling me that he hoped one day to see me break out of my shell and have a discussion in the world. Because at that time, I had the opportunity to take my film lectures and put them online, and I was like, I don't want anything to do with the internet. I don't want it. I could have had all my film lectures professionally filmed, and I turned it down because I didn't want to be known. I didn't want to have any of this stuff going on. It was like really weird to think back at that. And when that therapy ended, he basically said, he said it in German, so I can't quite quote exactly what he said. Oh no, actually that was in English. But I would maybe translated it in my head in German. But in any case, what he had said was, he'd said, I hope that I see you one day break out of this and things going well. And we had worked on me getting, some stuff up on the internet and whatnot. And the guy who offered to make all my film lectures up on the internet, like, it's not like he wasn't well connected or anything like that. And he did wind up connecting me with some pretty interesting folks in the film world that led to other things. But it was just one of those huge opportunities that came from not having parts of my brain chemistry unlocked appropriately to see the bigger picture, to see the path to doing virtuous things to help the world. So really, really interesting. Christian says, I'm making the Brain Games song now. All right. Can't wait to hear that and sing with you. Anyway, that was a little bit of a deviation, but it's also part of the topic today, right? Because it wasn't as if I didn't have 1,000 examples of other people using the internet and doing great things on the internet. They were everywhere, but part of me couldn't see it because I wasn't on the path. And if you're not on the path, you can't see the abundance of examples that are around you, right? So this destructive need where people say there's not enough mnemonic examples. If only I had enough examples. There are an abundance of examples. There's too many examples. That's the problem. And I felt that. I look back through my life and I see the times where I got stuck, where I had obstacles, where I turned down a professional Hollywood level film production of my film studies lectures, right? Like, it wasn't as if there weren't a bunch of examples out there of other people doing it. The teaching company, which I had watched, now it's called The Great Courses, I knew exactly what was possible, right? It was an example of how to do it and what can happen if you do. And a lot of those professors, they were very successful, and they still are. Like, look at Bart Ehrman, for example, now on the Waking Up podcast recently with Sam Harris. Part of him ever getting there has to do with the foundation that was laid because he was an early adopter of having his lectures filmed. But I said no. But it wasn't because there was a lack of examples. The world was filled with an abundance of examples, right? I just couldn't see them. And that's the problem in the world of memory training as well, is there's an abundance of examples, but for various reasons, the students can't see the abundance because for whatever, right? But they're there. They're there. So we need to figure out how to make the shift in perspective so you can see it, and you ultimately make the ultimate shift as quickly as possible, like right now, into just making your own mnemonic examples because you've, for example, taken the free Magnetic Memory Method course at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. There's a link down below. You can click it. You don't have to do all that typing, but that's how you get it done. And it's astonishing to me how much people are beginning to struggle, and maybe historically always struggled, with some simple things. Here's how to take a video course, free or paid. Start the video, press play, have something like this open with a pen. Take notes. When there's an exercise, complete the exercise as soon as possible. Speed of implementation. It matters. If you want results, if you want change, that's what you do. It's pretty simple. But I don't understand why that's such a big struggle, except for sometimes it's a struggle also for me. But I always remind myself of that. It's as simple as pressing play, paying attention, taking notes. If you join today's webinar at magneticmemorymethod.com/DC, it's not today, but it's taking place next week. If you register now and you're in time for that, you'll get a link to some of the note-taking techniques that I've used. Yes, there are some things that are boring. Yes, it can be hard to sit still. I've had all those problems. I was kicked out of school in elementary school because I was twitchy and nervous and they were feeding me all kinds of weird food, and they didn't know. It's not their fault, but I just couldn't get along, couldn't behave. I wasn't part of the normal human community because of various problems and so forth. And I know what it's like to have attention span problems, and I know how I solved it. And probably, maybe not all, but probably a lot of those solutions are going to be solutions for you as well, to create focus, to create concentration, to create consistent focus and concentration so that you can achieve the things you want to achieve in life. Because if you have barriers, you're not alone. Some of the most successful people in the world are twitchy freaks who really just had to find other ways around. Conventional knowledge could not, would not, and will never help those kinds of issues. There's other things that are needed. And that ultimate thing is for you to figure out you, right? Memory is a great way to figure out who you really are and what your memory really is, and then to test it, to challenge it, to use the tools of discernment that we teach, to use whatever it is, that whatever it takes. Because when you're with the magnetic memory method, this is not about systems. It's about you creating your own systems based on a deep understanding. And I mean a deep understanding in the sense that you define what it is you want to do, you establish a practice, you exercise the things that work, and then you practice the things that work, so that you go deep, and then you figure out how to go deeper and deeper and deeper. That's what the magnetic memory method is all about, and that's why it works for the mature learners, that it helps. And I'm so glad to see some of them here today. Speaking of which, Peggy, who has a chat here that I haven't addressed yet, thank you for that. First thing this morning, I get off my morning rituals, and I see that she is in the 30-day German challenge and has her magnetic imagery ready to go. Also, there's an email from her with some Memory Palace things. The images didn't show up quite properly, but I see this evidence of action, doing. Doing is the origin of consistency, and it's the origin of creativity and the courage and the clarity. Ultimately, the clarity that one seeks when they're seeking mnemonic examples comes from actually diving in and doing. So that's the DOC. Anyway, Peggy is saying here, I had to revise my Palace of World Cup winners today. The 98 beef bourguignon dinner under the Eiffel Tower turned delicious to tough, and you're sharing your numbers there. Excellent. For anybody learning your 00 to 99, Peggy has helped you out in a big way here with some mnemonic examples. But again, see them for what they are. They are either empowering or disempowering, depending on what you're going to learn from them, where you are in your journey, because mnemonic examples are they belong to the great pharmacy of the world. Pharmacy, pharmakon, is an interesting concept in ancient Greece, or ancient Greek, or let's just say from Derrida, who talked about it, which is the poison, or anything is a pharmakon is anything where the cure is the poison and the poison is the cure. And mnemonic examples are exactly like that. It leads to a lot of help for people who are prepared, who are qualified to sit down and study and are diligent, but it can lead to frustration for those who have not laid the foundations yet. And that's why we start with the Memory Palace in the Magnetic Memory Method, so that you really understand the foundations of spatial memory. Now, we don't always use that term, spatial memory, but you'll come to understand why that it's so powerful once you do it. And you can go to, I'm sure you can click on Christian's name here and just see how powerful that is in his demonstration videos. So that's oh, and you don't want to miss his Brain Games song either, because I'm sure that's going to be great. Anyway, one of the emails here that I also got this morning was there was somebody who was asking about if it's possible to memorize what he's calling 100 learning units a day. And he had written in such a way that I came to understand that he was saying he could do this with Anki. Learn 100 words in a single day with Anki. And so I said, sure, let's get on a live stream and I'll test you. and we'll just hang out all day and test you again later, and we'll figure out some way to ship you scientists. Or I didn't say this in the email, but I was thinking in my mind already. We can ship some scientists over there so that this is a real test. Because if you claim that you can memorize 100 words with 100% accuracy with Anki alone in one day, then your memory is superior. Now, there was some miscommunication there, and I assumed there sort of must have been. But nonetheless, he got back with a clarification, and he said essentially he put a bunch of qualifications on it, which are fair qualifications of what he actually meant, and very good. He said that each individual kanji in Japanese weighs about 3 units. I don't know what that means. But like, I don't know that words have weight, but that's an interesting concept and something that we maybe can discuss scientifically with some scientists at some point, which I'm very interested in doing. But he talked about how he's not talking about memorizing abstract things like a deck of 52 randomized cards in a few minutes or random digits about structured information, but human concepts or language. And the reality is that there shouldn't be that much difference between the two, but there is a difference, and a lot has to do with memory reserve. It has to do with the level of your practice. And so a lot of the memory athletes certainly could do 100 words in their mother tongue relative to their practice with doing so. So one thing you always have to understand is that the memory competitions are related to but different than learning practice and learning goals. But ultimately, what this person is saying is that he still wants to get the satisfaction of a particular question, which is, I always thought it was possible to surpass the mentioned limits with structured information and mnemonics. In the same way, mnemonists can memorize 1,000 digits and repeat them, or memorize 27 randomized cards, decks of cards in an hour, and repeat them later. And then he thinks that my reaction is me saying that that's not possible. And my response to this was essentially that I don't know what's possible. That's the beauty of memory, is that we don't know what's possible for this particular person. But it's all relative to practice and having goals and outcomes. And now I don't know this is exactly happening to this person, but there's a relationship here between the searching need for mnemonic examples and the searching need for what is possible, right? Nobody knows what's possible. If you go back and listen to my first interview with Phil Chambers, we talk about how they're trying to test card memorization, because the only limit right now, then and now, I'm sure, is the speed of the human hand. That's what we're fighting against, or that's what the competitors are fighting against in terms of improving their speed with cards. It's the human hand, right? So they can move very, very quickly. Alex Mullen has just done extraordinary things. Other people have done extraordinary things with cards. And there's different ways to memorize cards and practice cards. There's speed, for example, but there's also duration of retention, and there's also volume of cards, and then there's volume plus speed. There's retention plus speed, and so forth. I shared with an old memory journal of mine at the beginning of this stream. And, where you can push yourself through practice is incredible. But the question is not what is possible. The question is, what do you want to do, and what are you going to do in order to achieve that? And if you have this need, this destructive need for some confirmation of what's possible in the world, that is an obstacle that you need to get past, and you need to focus on your goal, and then you need to create the foundational structure that you're going to follow, understanding that you need to create the map in order to understand the territory, and things are never going to work out quite the way that it seems, and it's just the 4-minute mile, right? Like, think of any record-setting thing. The record is broken again and again and again. Sometimes 15 years passes before someone breaks it, but it's a record, and it possibly can be broken. Maybe it can't. Who knows? But what is the real matter here? What's the real question here? Is it that you're going to wait for confirmation that it's possible before you do it? Or are you just going to say, is 100 words a day in a language really reasonable and practical? If in your context it is, build the skills to do it, and I'm confident you can, right? There's no reason why you couldn't. except for your own decision not to do it. It should be possible. You're going to need some memory reserve. You're going to need some practice, right? And so ultimately, the question is for me, could I memorize 100 words in a day? And the answer is absolutely yes, but it depends on what language we're talking about, right? Because languages are different and my memory reserve is built up. So when I did my YouTube live stream where I was memorizing Chinese lyrics live, could anybody do that knowing what they know about memory techniques? Well, I don't know. But what I do know is that part of why I was able to do that is because I have at least two kinds of memory reserve working in my favor. Years of using memory techniques and some time spent with Chinese, right? But if it was Polish or something like this, I wouldn't maybe have pulled it off that easily. I probably would have still had some reasonable accuracy, right? But the I don't know how one would score that, what I did on that previous live, but it certainly was nearing 100%, and it was just astonishing to me as much as anybody. And it was fun. It was really, really fun. But at the end of the day, it would have been different if I didn't have some reserve in memorizing Chinese, right? And it's been quite some time since that I spent a great deal with German and sitting there and plowing through German. So I'd probably still be able to do that with German anyway because of memory reserve and consistent practice with my memory techniques, right? But if it was Polish, I really don't know. Be interesting to try. I don't have any Polish here, but in any case, well, actually, Polish isn't the greatest example because we shot a video course one time with Jimmy Narain, and they were all Polish, and I was memorizing poetry with them. So I actually do have some experience memorizing Polish, but not that much. So whatever, it could be some other language. But the reality is the answer is, could I do 100 words in a day? The answer is yes and no. It depends, and there will always be qualifying factors. This is what the memory championships are all about. What are the qualifying factors? What are the conditions and so forth? And what's going to count? And we know that it's a fascinating world. If you haven't read Moonwalking with Einstein, then I highly recommend that you read it, but also supplement it with some understanding of what actually goes on in the memory competitions, what they're all about, and how much genius has gone into and thought has gone into the qualifying measures. It's really, really important, and it's something that you really need to understand, and then you need to let it go if you're not a competitor, because a lot of that has very little to do with what you can do with learning large topics like languages or being a better professional in your profession, and so on. They're related and they're not related. It's very important to be able to discern that, and that's one of the things that you learn in the magnetic memory method. Barry says, I have palaces with hundreds of topics stored thus far. It is so much fun. Each palace represents a topic category to me. As I expand, should I consider some kind of indexing method for palaces? Indeed, there are many different kinds of indexes, and if you followed the magnetic memory method in its initial state, you would have a pretty solid index, if not a 100% solid index, that you could repeat again and again and again. Barry continues, by the way, your magnetic memory method class, I assume you mean the master class, is great. I use the methods mostly for business, yet I am looking forward to the vocab section of the class. Awesome, Barry. Well, thank you for the kind words, and really appreciate that. I'm glad that you're using it for business. I'm an entrepreneur myself. I really love to serve entrepreneurs, love to serve all people, but I think if you're in business, then you know that we don't have really a market at all if it weren't for our entrepreneurs, and they really, really are well served when their memory is better because they can do better on the market and really do better things. And I know there's a lot of criticism out there, and a lot of people are not really understanding because of some of the ways that the market is certainly not well handled by some entrepreneurs and so forth. But nonetheless, I think it's pretty obvious that we have the 80-20 rule working in our favor, and that's probably something like 80% of the people are just normal, good, decent human beings doing what they need to do. If they have memory techniques on their side, they're able to do it even better. But in terms of the indexing method, I think you should consider your options there, and then you should figure out what you may have already done that is a kind of indexing, and then you want to think about the goals, the outcomes that you want, and then the milestones that will help you achieve those goals as you craft whatever indexing things that you want to do. If you're not already using the classic magnetic memory method indexing method, then you might want to consider that, because there's great logic behind it that will serve your practice in some foundational ways. But there are other options. So since you're in the masterclass, you can always send me an email about that, and maybe we make if it's not clear, maybe we make an additional video about that for the masterclass. Let's see what else here. If anybody has any questions or further comments, if you're just joining us and you haven't said hello yet, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. We're going to be doing a webinar later this month at magneticmarymethod.com/DC. This is specifically for people who are maybe struggling a little bit with discipline and consistency. And I'm so glad that so many Magnetic Mary Method family members have shown up here today, because you are great examples of discipline and consistency. And this is one of those things where the memory techniques themselves can help you develop discipline and consistency when you use them in the best possible way, which is to direct them at information that's going to improve your life, like right now, today. So if it's a language you're struggling with, learn the techniques, use the techniques to learn the language, so that you get a real dopamine spike in the brain that shows you just how powerful this is. If it's a poem you've always wanted to memorize, use it for that. Learn the techniques using the poem you want to memorize, or song lyrics, or whatever, because we need quick victories in life. Memory has lots of quick victories. It just might require a bit of discipline to click play on a video and take notes, and then watch an entire course and take notes and actually follow through with the exercises. And then you need consistency. And I have had to learn discipline and consistency myself to do the things that I do. And that's what this webinar is all about. So it's at magneticmarymethod.com/DC. I'm going to talk about the 5 books that have helped me the most in this regard, the top 5. There's many books that have helped me in this regard. You can get registered, and I will give you a list of many, many more as well that you can look at. So you have a complete library to refer to again and again over the years. And really, really want to make sure that we can help people and serve them with this material. And that's what that webinar is all about. At magneticmarymethod.com/DC. Oh, Boo Boo the Bear's here. We were just having a great convo the other day on our, over the last couple weeks, actually. So thanks for being here. Thanks for saying hello. And hello, Professor, you say. Very glad to be here. Well, yeah, that's not incorrect at all. I mean, I do have a PhD. So even though I've started my own university at magneticmarymethod.com, I guess I still get professor status, even if I'm my boss. Well, actually, you're my boss, to tell you the truth. This is the beauty of entrepreneurship. The market is the boss, and the market has said hell yeah to the Magnetic Mary Method, and we are so glad that we are celebrating now 6 years of doing this full time, and really, really appreciate every single person who's been part of the journey, and it's really, really amazing. I always just am so grateful to be able to do this work and to have this topic. Even though I started with film studies and now I teach memory, in some ways they're exactly the same. It's just that what we do in our minds is more like a stage play and not really like a movie, because of how memory works and how the memory techniques work in memory. And you know what's so interesting too is that so many people show, like a life principle that I've never forgotten, I heard from Joe Polish, is that you meet the same people on the way up as you meet on the way down. And really, really interesting. I got an email from John Arden the other day, and he wanted to let me know about a new book that he has, which is called Mind, Brain, Gene. And it's just neat how things circle back. And someone I haven't heard from for years, who was very kind to interview me and give me some really good advice at a certain point about my skin condition and how it relates to arthritis, that really was a huge help along the way. And so I heard from him, and he's let me know about his new book. So that's John Arden, Mind, Brain, Gene. And we're looking forward to getting a copy of that as well, so that we can review it. Speaking of which, coming up soon on the Magnetic Mary Method podcast, my review of the new Tony Buzan book, Mind Map Mastery. And I've been doing much better mind mapping since reading it and having a lot of fun. And I look forward to putting that review for you. Something went wrong with last week's email. We're not sure what it was, but we released an episode with Christine Till on the Magnetic Mary Method podcast, and She gives the research that she's done on Huntington's and MS for memory and using CogMed and the truth about what CogMed brain training software does for people. And it's really, really compelling. So I'm going to pop that link for you into our chat in case that you want to listen to that. I really would love if you would click the share buttons on it and leave a comment for her. When we emailed it, it seems like the link was not working for a lot of people, and that makes me very sad. We're trying to troubleshoot what the heck went on there. It doesn't seem like user error, although I'm happy to be corrected if it is. But there's generally been some issues with the company that I use, and I'm asking them to fix it and take responsibility for it. And there's some other things, but we are on a wild ship with the internet. There's that link for you all if you want to listen to Christine Till talking about the real data you should know about CogMed for brain exercise. And the results I found really interesting and astonishing, and I think you'll find them helpful. And she's really great in explaining some brain science. I know it can be a bit of heavy duty listening, but we also talk about, more importantly, how to interpret scientific data, because it's often counterintuitive and strange. You think you're understanding one thing when actually the results are saying something different. So there was a really interesting comment on one of the YouTube videos before where the person was telling me about the conclusions from a scientific study. I went and looked up the study, and the study's not saying that at all. It's saying something quite different than what they had interpreted from it. And I, quoted exactly what those conclusions were. And often you'll read this, and journalists do it all the time. They read the scientific data, they say what they think it means, but the actual studies are not saying this at all. And of course, scientists are busy people. Somehow they don't go and correct it, or maybe they have bad intentions behind not correcting it, or I don't know what, corporate funding, et cetera, et cetera. But it's not about the science. Humans get involved in science and they misuse it and abuse it and so forth. But science itself is pretty solid and sound, and it actually is. Science is something that people observed in nature, and then they replicate it in how they study nature. So there's nothing wrong with science. It's how it's used that's problematic, and it's only problematic some of the time. So in any case, she helps us understand how to interpret this science better, and it'll save you a lot of pain if you come to understand what science is actually saying, and not at least not be gullible by some of the news reports, because you have this going on for you. So check out that. It's an excellent interview, and I really thank Christine for being there, and we're going to try and figure out how to promote it better when this company explains what the heck went wrong with that email. And by the way, just a quick question for you. We're always working to improve, just like we want to improve our memory progressively. We're not trying to be perfectionists, but progressionists. How do you like this new YouTube live streaming? How is it working for you? We're going to keep on trying to improve it, make it better, but one step at a time. And I hope it sounds better. I hope the signal is stronger, and we'll try and make it more engaging, get the chat up on the screen. But I wanted to just dive in and try a new thing in the same way I hope you will dive in and try something new, even if you don't know what's going to happen. Because when I do the things that I do online, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And that's how you get results. That's how you progress in life, is you dive in and just try things without fear. That's what this webinar is all about. It's like, how do you get not just discipline and consistency, but how do you get the courage to get started so that you can go deep, right? You can just define what it is that needs to be done, establish the way that you're going to do it and how you're going to get there, then figure out the exercise that you need, and then practice the exercise that you need. Christian says, loves it. Okay, thank you for letting me know. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. We got some chats here from Peggy. Peggy says, last week we had house guests for a week, and the discipline that comes through routines were all disrupted. But this week I'm back in the routines again. A few times I needed to remind myself, isn't it wonderful that I have people who like me well enough to come and disrupt my routine? Yes. Well, that's a blessing for sure. I mean, and this is what happens in life. And sometimes people just don't get started with things because they know that an interruption is coming. But, and here's a little story that might be interesting. When I knew that I needed to take care of my health because I wasn't able to walk anymore because of my psoriasis arthritis, I got help finally. The doctors weren't helping. The doctors were making it worse, the traditional things. Now, to be fair, like I did have a good doctor in Berlin, but it was just a doctor overwhelmed by, you know, handcuffed by government regulations and handcuffed by having oodles and oodles of patients and not being able to remember the ins and outs of my case. So he did fairly well, but he was also just following recommendations. And okay, so you're having this problem, and maybe his memory was too good because he's like, you fit this category, you're between this age group, and that suggests da 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 da, which is not real, right? At the end of the day, whether he's a good person or not, it doesn't matter. That's not real health. That's not real help. You need to be with somebody who can help you find the truth of you in the mix. And so I ended up having to hire people, and they were really great. They knew exactly what I needed to do to get to the bottom of the problem. Even if it wasn't going to be perfect, we are going to progress towards the solution, and we're going to have some tailor-made uh, things to do, right? And so I said to them, this is responding to Peggy and this idea of knowing disruptions are coming, so you don't even get started in the first place with something you know you need to do now, right? Um, so I said, well, I'm traveling to London. I got to go visit Ollie Richards in Cairo, where he was at the time. I got to go see Luca in Italy, and I had to go see Daniel in Madrid. All these things that I was doing to find all these great language learning people and help them improve my practice. Do some memory stuff, do some memory tests, do some memory development, do some product development, some books and stuff. Like all these things we were doing. And I had this huge to-do list. And the guy's name was Cliff Wild. He said to me, look, if you want to do this, we don't care where you are in the world. We'll figure out where you can send your blood, where you can send your urine, all the tests that you need. You just have to say, I am going to get this problem sorted, and we will figure it out around your schedule, and we will get it done. And so I said yes. And so I'm sending blood to Poland because of where I was located. I sent urine to Arizona from London. I'll never forget this. It was unbelievable, but that's what I did, and that's what they just told me to do. And then I don't really distinctly recall where in the world I was when I got the results, but I I was in Gran Canaria, and I just had to figure out this diet, and it was an elimination diet with rotation diet and so forth. And then I ultimately was back home when I lived in Berlin. And anyway, the thing was, is I heard deeply what he was saying, and I said, okay, we are going to start now because it has to start now. And I didn't worry about all these disruptions that were coming because the truth is that there's always something coming that's going to disrupt something. This is just the nature of life. We're all on a ship, and we don't know where the icebergs are, right? And we're not on the Titanic. And the Titanic, as big and powerful as it was pretty easy to sink. We're much more like on these little individual boats, and we have much more dexterity so long as we are constantly optimizing ourselves and our boat and maintaining our boat as we go along to at the last minute around big obstacles. But we have to have the lights, and that's why we seek help from other people, is to shine the light, because we can't see our own blind spots. We can't even see 15 feet in front of us half the time, right? So we get more people. We get involved in communities. We get involved with personal coaches, and we study books constantly. If our coach tells us to read this book, we go and read it and so forth, because that's a way of shining light that removes the ignorance. The word guru just means someone who shines light on your ignorance and removes the darkness, but helps you remove the darkness. Actually, they don't like that might be what the word means, but they don't actually do any of the darkness removing activities. They help you figure out where the light is and where to direct it and shine it, and to develop your light, make your light stronger so that you're your own guru. That's what real teachers do, right? Is they don't give you learned helplessness. They don't give you pain of disconnect where you gotta keep on, da 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 da. They want you out of there as quickly as possible so they can go and help more people, right? And then they want you to be part of helping. That's why I'm so glad Christian's here and Peggy's here and Barry's here, is because the best thing that can happen is you don't need me anymore, because you've gotten the teaching, and now you can go and help others, and you can help others through our community, or go start your own memory business if you want. But at the end of the day, that's the ideal, right? That's the real thing. And Cliff never said that to me, but that was basically what he said, is like, you're going to go through this process with us, and you're going to figure out your own health in the mix, and then you will fix yourself. You'll know so much about health by the time that we're done with you that you won't need us anymore. That's exactly what happened. And that's what teaching should be. That's what education should be, is you being empowered to be you. But the cost is that you have to show up. You have to meet the teacher halfway, and you have to be real. If you're not ready for it, there's no problem. We just focus on the people who are, and we hope that they will join us in helping attract more people who are ready, and we show them the path through demonstration. So again, I can only say happy that Chris is here, and thank you so much for your juggling videos and your coin rolling videos, and then it gives me the opportunity to roll some coins too, and so forth. It's not about showing off. It's not about anybody's ego or anything like that. It's just that this is real. This is real, and the way you get it is by going deep. Right? You define your goal, what it is you want. You establish the practice that's going to get you there. You're going to get some exercises to do, and then you're going to practice those exercises. Next thing you know, you'll be memorizing entire poems and juggling too if you want, or just memorizing entire poems. Or you'll be speaking a lot better that language that's on your bucket list, or you'll be remembering all your passwords, or whatever it is you want to do. Peggy this morning, she's in the German 30-day vocabulary challenge. She's got an amazing word she's chosen. She's got amazing magnetic imagery. She clearly understands what to do and how to do it. And then it's just a matter of continuing to go deep. She's defined a goal, 30 days of working with the magnetic memory method for German. She's established the practice. How? Well, I've got oodles of things depending on what it is you're studying in the masterclass. You establish that practice for yourself. I set you free to do it, right? Not going to handhold you through everything because it's impossible. It's your memory. It's your mind. It's your personal history. It's your tools that are in your head. You might not know ABBA to the extent that I know, so you can use ABBA in your memory things. My mnemonic examples of Frank Zappa, you'd be like, Zappa who? Right? And then I might talk about the negative dialectics of poodle play, which is a book about Frank Zappa. And I use that book to help me with memory techniques. You're just lost. And no doubt you're lost because mnemonic examples aren't the key. It's you creating your own magnetic imagery because you're on the path. That's what we do. We make you the best you, right? We help you find this. Anyway, that's what Cliff did for me. And he told me, if you want to get started, now is the time to get started. Why? Because there's endless obstacles coming. There's endless variations in life coming. There's endless unknown things coming. So if you want to be on the path starts now. And you can wait all that you want. It's not going to help you. What's going to help you is understanding that you need to get started on what it is you want to do now. And then you got to keep it going. And you got to keep it going by being with authentic people who are real, who really care about your journey, and who will give you the tough love when you need it. And the tough love is that we're all on our own. There's no getting around that. But we're not on our own at the same time because we're all one. We're all connected. But the depth of our connection comes down to our diligence and our being together and being true to what really works, without the woo-woo, without the fakeness, without the nonsense promises of woo-woo science and all this pseudoscience. There's so much crap and garbage out there. And in some of that crap and garbage is some good stuff, right? And sometimes in good stuff, there's crap and garbage. This is just the pharmacon. This is the world that we're in. We're in this giant pharmacy where there's lots of pills that have a cure that can poison the hell out of you, and there's some poisons in there that can cure you if you apply them correctly, right? But you need a pharmacist who knows what to recommend, who knows the cautions to recommend for you, and who you bring the prescription to, right? And what prescription, this is what I learned from Cliff, and I'll always be eternally grateful for it, is when you go to a doctor, you have to be responsible for what they understand about you, and you have to be knowledgeable about the prescription that they put in your hands. And then you go to the pharmacy and you know that the cure is going to contain a poison, and any poison you take may or may not cure you relative to how you use it, how you apply it, and so forth. It's the same thing with mnemonic examples. I can say, hey, here's my full demonstration walkthrough of all the hiragana in Japanese, right? Well, if you don't have that cart behind your horse and you're trying to put the cart in front of your horse, that's just going to be like, what the heck is this, right? Ken is doing cocaine? Like, what the heck? But if you have that cart where it's supposed to be, which is behind the horse, because you've done the foundational things in the steps that I've taken great pains to show you. Start here, then do this. And if you can click a video and just take some notes and then follow the exercises, bang, next thing you know, you're going to have these techniques. But you've got to be willing to surrender to the teacher the way I have been willing to surrender to the teacher. And then, use discernment, because not every teacher is right for every student. All right, and not every teacher is right for every student at that time, but there's pretty minimal risk when it comes to memory techniques. You just are using your imagination, and the worst thing that can happen is you get disappointed in yourself because you haven't shown up as your best self, which is what this webinar is all about. magneticmemorymethod.com/DC, discipline and consistency. How can you do that, right? When all the chips are stacked against you, when you don't have any clarity on how to move forward. Well, I'll share with you my 5 books that have helped me the most. And there's some tough love in them too. And tough love is sometimes what we need. So let's check in with our chat here. I haven't done this. Barry says, love the live streaming podcast and YouTube posts. Thank you for your discipline and consistency. Yeah, I mean, this isn't anything about bragging or whatever, but if anybody is concerned about whether the magnetic memory method is the real deal, just go to the website. We're well over 200 podcast episodes, hardly miss a week. Sometimes we do, but there's usually some technical issue or April was in the hospital there for appendicitis and got a little behind the ball there or whatever. But if you need any demonstration of consistency that this is the real deal in this community and so forth, I know it's kind of all over the map. It's partly to do with the nature of the internet, but there is a home. It's called magneticmemorymethod.com. The blog is there. I've done all that I can to make sure that nearly every episode is in full writing. If you're not a podcast listener, read it. There's this YouTube channel, over 400 videos. This didn't come out of nowhere. This is true knowledge, real knowledge that is deeply connected with thousands of years of tradition. And it's not just a facile surface knowledge, but if you were on last month's webinar, then I shared the 5 books that helped me the most that nobody seems to know, and the secrets in them, and gave this massive list of all kinds of other stuff, not to send people on wild goose chases, but rather just to give you a resource so you can find yourself in the mix and find the teacher that's going to work for you. Because at the end of the day, the magnetic memory method is a course that you can get, but it's also a university of memory techniques for anybody who cares about this tradition, because I am a professor, and I would never teach philosophy and say read Plato and Plato alone. That would be stupidity. Same thing with memory. Read Lorraine, read Buzan. Go see Buzan if you can. I don't know how many more sessions he's running. I don't even know if he's running any more sessions, but I took the opportunity when I could now, because now is the time to do it, right? You never know what's going to happen. Amazing, amazing guy. And if only Phil Chambers is there, go now, because Phil is an amazing, amazing guy. Take action. Figure it out. Just be part of this world and find all the teachers that resonate with you, that you trust, and figure out how you can trust them. Spend all the time that it takes to figure out if you can trust them or not. I may or may not have an opinion on them. If they haven't been on my podcast, there's usually a reason that why. And it could be scheduling, which is innocent. It could be that they're just not appropriate human beings, which also has happened. There's been some weird stories behind the scenes, and some people have their knives out, and it's unbelievable. Usually they're competitors, and they're not competitive. They may be competitors in the market sense, or they may be competitors in the sense that they're so worried that someone's going to get some secret and destroy their standing in the records. Oh, yawn. Come on. We got bigger fish to fry here. We've got Alzheimer's to help. We've got dementia to stave off. We've got just people struggling to learn and get degrees so they can serve their families at a higher level, right? We've got things to do. And when people's egos get involved in stuff like that, who cares if they're on my podcast or not? But chances are, if they're not on my podcast, there's a reason. And if there's someone who's not on my podcast you think I should talk to, let me know. I will do what I can to get them on there. I don't bang my head against the wall, though. There's only so many invites that I'm going to send to make it happen. And so, again, I would just say, if they haven't been on my podcast, there's usually a reason why. But if you ever need any demonstration of my own discipline and consistency, it's just right there. You can use the Wayback Machine and look at earlier versions of the podcast my website as well, and you'll see constant attempts to improve over time. not to be a perfectionist, but to progress and to use the best adaptations that the internet has had in order to do the best for people. I'm learning so much. I take courses all the time, learning about structured data now, because it's pretty clear to me that I don't know enough about what Google needs to see, and then trying to find the sweet spot between what human communication and robot communication, what Christian Book used to call, or well, still perpetually calls, robo-poetics, because he wrote about it in an article to that effect. And that's on UbuWeb if you ever want to check it out. He was a professor of mine. I don't think he likes me much as a person, but in any case, he was very, very influential on me. And actually, I don't know that for a fact, but someone told me that I gave him one of my books and that he sold it to a bookstore. So maybe that's why I get that impression. Actually, I'm sure he likes me just fine as a person, but he was very influential on me on like real ethics, what real knowledge is about, and he just talked about robo-poetics, and he said, and this is early days of the internet, really. He said one day the only people that will read poetry are the robots. So you might as well write poetry for the robots in advance, because only the search engines are going to be reading the poetry that people put. And it's true. Like if you look at some of the poetry blogs, I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of them are read by robots, not by humans, crawling, the spiders crawling their websites. Anyway, the point is we work hard, and we work out of love for this tradition and out of love for the mature learners who want to get it working for them. Because I understand that there are some mysteries in some people's heads. Other people just get it real quick, and we don't know exactly why, although we have some clues because of the 4 learning types, the 4 learning styles. And I do all that I can to make sure that all my courses hit all those 4 learning styles as quickly as possible. There may be more. Learning styles. But in any case, Barry says, love the live stream, and we read that, but just wanted to jump on that this is a sign of discipline and consistency. And I use the same discipline and consistency to get up every day, memorize some cards almost every day, do some language learning almost every day. I've got this thing here that I'm working with in my language learning. It's we've got to this point in German that we got to have Chinese function words. Great. I'm just on page 1, but so far so good in terms of memorizing the stuff and getting it into conversation. And, it's just, this is what we do. This is what I do, and I love it. And this is all coming out of love for the tradition. And there's problems. It's unbelievable how the internet changes and could throw everything out of whack, and the solutions aren't that easy sometimes on the website. But we appreciate all the patience that people extend and the understanding when a few things go awry. Nothing really major has gone awry, but a few little things, and we're always looking for solutions and help. If you want to get involved at a deeper level, if you're an internet tech, there might be a job for you. So reach out. So let's see here. Dee says, sorry, one last question. Do not apologize, Dee. Questions are good. Please keep them coming. Do you think it's more important to take time to craft vivid images or to create them quickly? Well, that's an interesting question, Dee, because some people have done research on this, and they've actually said, should you spend more time on encoding or more time on decoding, right? And they got really deep into the studies, and they produced all this data and so forth. And I looked at this, it's actually in a TED Talk on it, and I looked at this, and I just thought, this is a ridiculous question, right? What scientific study is ever going to give a blanket answer that serves all people? Zero. So whether you need to spend more time on encoding or decoding has to do with you. The reality is you probably need attention on both. I'm always working on both and improving both. But the weakness tends to be on encoding and decoding. Like the weakness tends to be on the circle, right? Because whatever advantage, like this has to do with memory reserve and your level of practice with the techniques, and your diligence with paying attention to the techniques in the first place. Because typically when I make mistakes, it's because I didn't encode right the first time. I didn't follow the principles, the well-established rules. but not always, because sometimes you get away with hell. You get away with it because you have memory reserve. So there were some people that I met at an event, Marnie and the other name will come to me in a second, I'm sure. But I remember Marnie, and I just didn't quite do enough with it. But I still got her name back anyway. Rhonda was the other one. But I got the name back anyway because it's just amazing to me. I always get a little bit tickled myself when I use these techniques. But like I sometimes get away anyway, even if I don't use all the stuff, just because I have so much practice with it. So there's like this general memory advantage, but don't be too sure, don't be too sure, don't be too sure. That's something that Gary Halbert said one time. I was going to say, like, that's something Gary Halbert always said, as if I was always around Gary Halbert. I read it once and I heard it multiple times because I listened to audiobooks multiple times. So I have the impression that, like Gary Halbert always used to say, well, he probably only wrote it once, but he said, don't be too sure, don't be too sure, don't be too sure. And that is really the path of the memory samurai, right? Is you're always prepared to execute one last move, even with your head cut off, right? So maybe that's a bit of a mystical thing for the people who like mind puzzles, but think about that. Think about how that pertains to memory, right? So, what did I say? Marnie and Rhonda, right? I remembered their names, but I wasn't quite aware at that moment that I hadn't encoded enough. But when I looked back, I was like, damn, that was a close call. And you'll have that in your own practice and you'll see. But so typically what ends up happening is that there isn't enough precision with the encoding. And so you need to know that for yourself, Dee, and practice that for yourself and understand it through experience. It's experience that's going to give you the real knowledge, right? And what does knowledge do? It gives you that light that we were talking about, so you see the icebergs before they're coming, and you get better and better and better. But sometimes life will still throw you a curve. You're memorizing one person's name, and the next person is Marnie or whatever. And what happened there, I remember, I just thought, oh, isn't there a Hitchcock movie named Marnie? And I just left it at that. But I should have seen, some image from the movie. I should have maybe seen a Mars bar to get the Mar in there. Like I should have done more so it was more bulletproof, but things were going by so fast. But I got away with it. But that would be an example of more time spent on encoding. Now the decoding part too is, it depends on your practice, right? It depends on where you are in the game. It depends on what your strengths are. Like names is one of my good ones. I'm really strong with names, provided they're names with real people that I've really, really met. So some of the tests that I've done, like they're just abstract things. You don't take them as seriously with the software. I don't care about software training. I care about real life training. And I do not believe for a second that training with software is going to give you real help in real life situations. What's going to give you real help in real life situations is actually practicing memorizing real names in real life situations. There's easy ways to do that we talk about in the course on names and faces, so that there's no stress involved as you build up to that. But you don't have to take my word for it either. Nelson Dellis is on the podcast. One of the things that he says in his episode is he says, if you want to compete in the U.S. Memory Championships, it was an episode on how to win the U.S. Memory Championships, what he says there is profound to those whose ears are open to hear this. He says that if you want to win the memory championships, you have to practice competition. You have to compete, right? Because the techniques, you can practice the techniques all day long and be really good in private, which a lot of people are, but that's not using the techniques in competition. Using the techniques in competition is itself an art, a practice, a skill, right? So it's the same thing with anything. Like playing music by yourself is not the same skill as playing music in front of an audience, right? And one of the lessons there that I always learned, which doesn't work the same way in competition, is, when I was on tour with a band, I remember making a mistake, and Tito, the drummer, he said, as long as you don't look like you made a mistake, no one will know. And that is part of the skill of performance, right? And it's not universally true. There might be somebody who hears a sour note, usually because they know the song, right? But if you express that there's a mistake there, then, it's going to look like a mistake. And that's in the music world. In memory world, if you make a mistake, it's a mistake. And that's what's beautiful about memory science and memory, is that you either got it or you didn't. You either remember it or you don't. Although there are some levels of gray area there. But the point being is that you're perfectly able at some level to really, really feel yourself in this journey, because you're on the journey. Because you're on the journey. And if you're not on the journey, then you're totally lost in terms of what all this is about. You might get it conceptually, but you don't get it in your soul. You don't get it in your chemistry of your brain and so forth. And so you practice it in real life situations, using information that's actually going to improve your life. That's like the biggest principle there. So basically, Dee Dee, to circle back to answering your question, you focus on what it is you need. Okay, so if you need vivid imagery, I don't need my imagery to be that vivid, right? I just make sure that it's vivid anyway, because don't be too sure. Don't be too sure. Don't be too sure. I want to always make sure that I'm putting as much time and attention as is available in the moment, but I also don't want to rely on it needing to be vivid, right? Because sometimes there isn't time to make it all vivid. So you want both skills. You want to be good at making things vivid, but you also want to be good at just like getting what works, depending on what the information is, depending on what the context is. Then when it comes to being able to create them quickly, well, you'll be able to create them quickly if you just practice quickness. That's another thing about cards, right? Cards is a great way to just have a wonderful brain exercise that is quick, speedy, understanding, learning, and figuring it out, and so forth. Like I have new discoveries like almost every day. I'm just looking down here at my cards if I want to get off screen to pick them up and demonstrate, which I will. I have new discoveries every day with cards when I practice with them. Something comes to mind, some little experiment or some new revelation of how this can go with that. But I usually take the jokers out, as I was talking about earlier before that I get started. But you could add jokers for a level of challenge. But so this is Wyndham Lewis, and Wyndham Lewis had a journal called The Enemy, right? And anyway, it doesn't matter, but you'll figure out what is good for you. And that has to do with this being grounded on the major method. And so this is now Jennifer Lopez, right? So now I'm going to have some kind of discovery every single time. I don't think that these two have ever come together, to tell you the truth. They may have come together this way, but I don't have a distinct image of him acting on her, right? So that's interesting. That's already a new discovery. But you'll find these things. And then there's other things that happen. Like this morning, I had a 7 of spades, and then I had an 8 of hearts, and then a 7 of hearts. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like I just never saw that before. Fooling Houdini, I think, is the name of the book by Alex Stone. I was thinking about him this morning, actually, and I should reach out to him and write to him. He was on the podcast once upon a time. He talks about like the near infinite array of potential with the cards and the mathematics behind the arrangements of cards and so forth. It's really, really interesting. But one of the discoveries that you have all the time is how these can interact with each other and how you can increase your speed. And so, as I read earlier that I found in my memory journal there, I was like doing these trials on increasing my speed in these 30-second little blasts, and if I could do it disinterestedly. And I found that I had a certain percentage there. I think I wrote 78% accuracy doing it disinterestedly with a small set of cards in 30 seconds. And I found that forgetting to take the jokers out caused a blip that threw a lot of the sequence. So that's a little discovery there, a little wonderful thing. It has application to language learning. What might be the things that are throwing the practice there, reducing speed, right? And so forth. So you practice for speed if you want. I have. Sometimes I practice for accuracy. Lately, my practice has been how many cards can I get on a station. Now, I competed with Dave Farrow, and if I recall correctly, he said he has 6 cards per station. I've built up to 4 cards per station relatively, and I don't know that he calls it station, incidentally, because I'm not sure the extent to which he's using a memory palace. It sounds like he isn't, except for the fact is that if you really understand these techniques, there's always spatial memory involved one way or the other. But anyway, I built up to 4 cards per station. And again, this is not for competition. It's just for personal practice and discovery and research and so forth. But I figured something out about what I would probably call, before I come up with like a sexy term for it, just recursion. So there's a recursion effect that I discovered in my practice that probably help you in your practice as well. I just need to find a sexier term for it than recursion. But anyway, it's pretty cool. So I hope that answers your question, Dee Dee. It basically comes down to where you are, what are your goals, what are you going to do to reach those goals, how can the memory techniques serve? And if you want to know more, we'll be talking more about memory on this webinar, but the precise exact purpose of this webinar is about discipline and consistency. That's why it's /DC, discipline and consistency. If you'd like to get your seat, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/DC. There's a link to click in the description if you're seeing it. I don't know what device you're using, but I hope you'll be able to join us. That would be awesome. And so Sandra says, picture and sound are crisp. Thanks for letting me know that, Sandra. Is deep an example of your mirror writing? Have you resolved the issue with the reversed images? Well, this is not mirror writing, although that would have been a good idea, but to be prepared. But if you're seeing this in a normal order, I highly recommend this actually, even though I'm still only on page 1. Just got it out from the library. If you're seeing that in normal order, then I guess the mirror writing issue is solved. And it took a while to figure out how to do that, but this is what constant progress is all about. Boo Boo the Bear says, this is great. Happy to be exposed to great wisdom. Thanks for that. Thumbs up to you, Boo Boo the Bear. Thanks for your kind words. Really appreciate it. Barry in Idaho says, among the greatest pieces of advice you've given us is the admonition to relax while I work through the method. I am much more productive when I do so. Well, thanks for pointing that out, Barry. Yeah, I've said it before and I'll never forget it. Some dude leaving a review of one of my books, and he said, advice in this book is to squeeze your buttocks. And he said some negative stuff. Hell yeah, squeeze your buttocks. You need your body to be relaxed. How can your mind, which is coming out of your brain, which is a physical thing, how can it work at an optimum state if it's not relaxed? How do you relax this muscle between your ears? You make sure everything's relaxed, right? Your whole body is relaxed. I never come on these things. I never record the podcast. Well, I mean, obviously there's exceptions to the rule. There have been times where I'm so excited I just hop on and do it. But I'm always relaxing my body and meditating in the morning, making sure that everything is as relaxed as it can be, because that's how you get top performance. Like, this is just known in the athletic world, but for some reason when it comes to mental performance, it's not as known. And I've known it for a very, very long time, because when I did my PhD research in friendship, I thought of somehow I had a weird brain leap that turned out to be quite fruitful, and I thought about hypnosis, went and studied hypnosis, thinking about how it is that people connect with one another and so forth. And I learned to relax. I learned what deep relaxation really is, right? And how to access it for myself. And when I started with memory techniques, I had an advantage from the get-go, because I at least knew a little bit about this. And, I also knew about self-hypnosis going years and years back before this. But it's well known that if you just relax your body, then you're going to perform a lot better at whatever it is you're doing, including memory. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Barry. And it is a core part of what makes the magnetic memory method magnetic. It also helps you just let go of the outcome. Because if you're focused too much on the outcome, you're going to strangle it. What is it that's said in the Tao Te Ching? Is that if you try to change it, you'll destroy it. If you try to keep it, you will lose it, right? Now, that doesn't have an exact parallel to what we're talking about here, but think about your memory in this way, in a sense, that if you're not relaxed, then everything you're trying to do, you will destroy, because you're trying to change the information instead of trying to accept the information as it is, right? And direct it where it needs to go, almost like a flow, right? And if you try to change the information so that it works, quote unquote works, you'll destroy it. And if you try to keep the information, then you'll never have it. You'll lose it, right? And Ben Pridmore, he gave a really interesting interview to Ron White, and he says exactly that. Ben Pridmore, if you don't know him, he's done astonishingly well in the memory competitions, and he was not that long ago on Britain's Got Talent, I think that show is called, and he was memorizing some cards, and sadly, people laughed at him. But in any case, the whole thing is the advice that he gives there is you've just got to trust your memory, which is kind of like just let it go. Let go of the outcome. Don't worry about the mistakes. Don't worry about the rewards. Worry about the process. Be in the moment. How do you get in the moment? You relax. Relax your body. That will relax your mind. If you're all, oh, I got to have all the information in this book. I got to memorize every card, 100% accurate. I got to memorize every word. I got to memorize every name. Just let it go. Let it go. You know, like, and I have to practice this myself. Like I gave you the Marnie example and the Rhonda example. I caught myself in that moment because I was just like, oh man, like just let it go. It doesn't matter if you make the mistake. Just admit you made a mistake and move on, right? Maybe I have a little bit of advantage because I also studied magic for so long, right? Because there's lots of times that I will, try to do a certain thing that I won't mention because I don't want to give away secrets, but I will fail at something, right? And I just have to let it go and do something else. And to the audience, they have no idea that I've made a mistake, and then I'll make another mistake and another mistake, and they have no idea. So the card that was supposed to be here is now in a pocket, right? Because the whatever. There's just endless things. And good magicians, the magicians you love, they may be not nearly as bulletproof as you think, but you'll never know because they're relaxed. They're able to let it go in real time and just continue to be entertaining. And I've seen some of the best magicians just say, whoops, that was unfortunate, and then just laugh it off and carry on, right? And it's the same thing with your memory training. You just got to let go of the outcome. All right, so let's see here. Thank you again, Barry, for pointing out that thing about relaxation, because it's the key to life. Just be relaxed. I saw this Tony Robbins documentary not too long ago, not the I Am Not Your Guru one, but just a business in a Forbes magazine documentary or something like this. And he's just like relaxed because he relaxes himself with the cold water treatment and meditating and whatever. It's just if you want to be a top performer, relax. Timothy Wynn. Oh, hi, Timothy. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate that. I hope you got my email response the other day there. So Timothy says, I'm memorizing 107 philosophers and up in 45. I walk around my neighborhood and pretend to discuss reality, truth, and religion. It's very powerful as I learn about them and remember their philosophies. My neighborhood is my memory palace. Awesome, Timothy. That's awesome. Yeah, I was actually thinking about something similar too, like making a podcast or a blog post or something like, why talking to yourself is the path to memory and not insanity, and something like that. Because we know that memory helps when you speak things verbally. You get a memory advantage from speaking verbally, right? And sometimes you don't have people to speak to. But I'm speaking all the time in the shower about things that I want to remember, not because I'm going crazy, but because I want to remember. So good point. Thanks for sharing that. And again, this is the ideal Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and Mastermind students here contributing to the community. I really appreciate that because we are all each other's teacher and we are all each other's student. Rohit's here. Oh, good to see you, Rohit. He says, I love your idea of memorizing cards every day for practice. Are there other things one can do that would work well? Thank you. Well, Rohit, great question. And yeah, I mean, look, if you can get cards, you can get cards that have nothing on them, right? So this card has nothing on them. So put something else on it, right? It could be names of people. It could be numbers. It could be anything. But don't do it in the rote learning way. Do it in the magnetic memory way and for memorizing. So, for example, you probably already know the name Brian. You probably already know the name Charles and Tina, or maybe you go through the names of the list here of the people who are here, like Boo Boo the Bear and Peggy Darling and Rohit, right? And you just think, all right, I'm going to remember the names in the order that they show up today. If you're a teacher and you already know all the names of your students, you could just ask them to randomly assort themselves in a different way and remember the order they were in. Take a photograph, remember the order that they were in, and then later write down what order you remembered, and then check the photograph to see if you were correct. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, little brain exercise right there. You can do it every day. I'm thinking of Don Summerhays. Actually, he was a professor of mine, and he used to take a photo of the students because he was going blind, and he died sadly. One of my favorite professors, deeply influential and impactful. But he was going blind, and he took photos of his students, and then he would have it in front of him. And one of his biggest challenges was that people would change, and he wouldn't know where they were. So anyway, that just comes to mind. But one of the reasons why I let things come to mind is because it's good memory exercise, right? And it will give me more memory of Don that I want to preserve because he was such an incredible person. He wrote interesting books also. So look up Don Summerhays. He was at York University. If you want to read some good poetry. Peggy says, yes, Anthony, you're an example of being consistent, experienced, honest, and authentic. I hope the internet continues to grow in all the right ways. Thank you, Peggy, for that. And yeah, it's a real challenge, the internet. I mean, I know why some people cut corners and so forth, but it's not going to pay off in the end. And it's really damaging a lot of the reputation of the internet itself, which of course is not a thing to have a reputation. But in any case, there are powers that be that are competing with one another. I do my best to be on the up and up in terms of keeping positive and so forth, but we see some pretty goofy things going on. Sovereignty is getting its foot in the door, and it could be good, it could be bad, who knows. William S. Burroughs, he once said that control seeks to control control, which I think is very much what we see all the time on the internet, is control seeking to control control. But at the end of the day, you've just got to let things go and, practice what you've got with what you've got. Always try to improve. And you know what? Sometimes even if things like the beginning of this live webinar, for example, was a rough start because it was the first time we were trying this particular thing. I think I had the mic on when I didn't want it, and I was like, stop, because the computer was going off. But in any case, it doesn't matter. Like, these little mistakes don't matter. People don't tend to remember anyway, Like, there's a book called You Are Not So Smart, which you got to read. I hate saying the title because it sounds like I'm saying you are not so smart, but that's what the book's called. Anyway, it talks about one of the fallacies where we tend to think that people are remembering our little faux pas and our foibles, when actually the majority of healthy human psychology, they will forget whatever it is you think you did wrong within 2 to 3 seconds, if not 2 to 3 minutes. So you don't have to sit there and punish yourself all day long if something went wrong. In any case, speaking of books like that, we are having a webinar at magneticmemorymethod.com/DC. Get yourself registered if you want the 5 memory improvement books that have helped me the most. You Are Not So Smart is not on that list, although maybe it should be. Maybe there'll be 6. But the 5 memory improvement books that have helped, or not memory improvement books, sorry, self-development books and books of the like that have helped me with discipline and consistency the most. And if you're struggling in those areas, these recommendations, and you will be well served by reading them, but I will give you the recommendations that helped me the most from them in ways that you will be able to instantly apply. But you need to be on that webinar. It's private, it's closed, you need to register, and you will, for attending the webinar, get a much more extensive list of recommendations. So you have a library to refer to that will be worth its weight in gold. If I had to put a price on what this library is worth, let's say $97 at least, if you're the kind of mature learner who actually follows through on recommendations. So the webinar itself, let's say, with this particular gift for attendees, is at least a $97 value, well worth your time. If you were on the last one, we had a wild time. 72 people, I think, were on there, and we just went through the 5 books that helped me the most with memory based on a survey. I was blown away that people didn't know these, or they didn't mention them anyway in the survey, and I showed you exactly how impactful they are and can be, and then gave you a big list. We'll probably do that webinar again in the future, but for now we're doing this because I have an inordinate number of emails coming through my system all the time. I read every single one. I'm a stubborn person. The normal way that entrepreneurs work is that they get an assistant to read their email as soon as possible. I did it the opposite way. I love to be in touch with you guys. I love to know what it is that's going on so I can be the best possible teacher that I can be, and constantly improve and really understand. And there's just so many emails that the memory techniques aren't the problem. It's discipline and consistency. And this is something that no matter who you are, what your situation is, you can find your way to kick your boot in the door of discipline and consistency and keep pushing it open and open and open and open until you are consistent enough and disciplined enough to increase your discipline and consistency towards real gains in life. Real gains. The kinds of things that I have been able to do because of those skills, okay? And it has direct applications to memory and cards and languages and numbers and names and large massive books and whatever it is you have to memorize. but you're not going to ever use those memory tools if you don't have the discipline and consistency. So that's what we're talking about on this webinar. You're going to be well served. And if you're not and you got complaints and so forth, just let me know and we will figure out what to do to make it better for you. But I do all these things out of just love and compassion and put on a good time full of knowledge. And if you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and at least some intentionality behind applying maybe just one thing you hear there, well, you're going to see greater things happen in your life. This is undoubted, uncontested. Again, you can just go and look at my site and its history and its consistency. The dates are all there, and we show up week after week, almost every week for years now. 6 years full time. I'm really, really excited. So, thank you everybody who was here today. If you got any last minute little questions or chats or whatever, hit that thumbs up. Let me know. I'm just looking at my email to see if there's anything interesting here to go through that leaps out at me from the subject lines as we wind down. Thanks for those who let me know how you like this new format. I'm going to work it out. Maybe get Ali, who's the video editor, to create something a little bit more fun and engaging or whatever. But we just wanted to roll and see that the software was actually going to work. And our webinar software works really, really great. So don't worry about that at magneticmurraymethod.com/DC. It's the YouTube angle and integrating with that that's been a bit of a challenge. But we're always working on it, and things things are weird on the internet always, and we're always doing everything we can to keep ahead of the changes, because the powers that be, all of a sudden, they don't even give you any warning. They just change everything, and unbelievable. But at some level I understand it. Understanding is, at the end of the day, all we have. There are things in life that are changing, that are always changing, that are always going to change. That's just the nature of things. But there are also some things in life that are eternally the same. And one of those things that must be eternally the same is the word, maybe it will die and go away, but let's not use the word eternal. But there's something inside of us all that is the same, and it's glowing bright inside. And if you can figure out how to find it, then it will guide you and be your protector and give you all the confidence that you need. And I don't know what to call that thing, but it's been singing loud and clear, and a lot of it is because I sat down and did what it is that we need to get done, and to do it consistently and to do it with discipline. And anybody can tap into this. I know this. We know it scientifically. I've read all the books, like I mentioned earlier, how enlightenment changes your brain, not mine, yours, but it changes mine too. There's some deep thing that we're all connected to. We must be, right? We cannot not be, because we are life. So there's lots of arguments and disagreements about the fact that anything exists, but things do exist, and each person is seeing through eyes at the world. And if they don't have eyes to see, then they have ears to hear or something. Let's just not get too carried away, but let's just say the average normal functioning human being. And behind those eyes is something that's perceiving, and it is some people call it the witness and all that sort of stuff. But there's something that just doesn't change. And I think back to my childhood and how I used to lay on the couch. We'd be dropped off in the early morning at the babysitter's. My mom was a shift nurse. And we'd be there, and I'd be laying there, and I'd be thinking just space. And I'd be flying through space. And this vast, empty space. And it was like sometimes I'd be Superman or whatever, or I'd be just this guy floating through space, or I'd just be the space itself. And stars would float past, or sometimes it would just be this blackness. And I don't know how I ever lost it. Probably school beat it out of me or whatever. But I just remember having this wonderful contentedness, even though there was so much chaos in life. Parents always fighting, drunkenness and madness, my mom's crazy schedule. And they were feeding me all this bad food for me. They didn't know, but they didn't have the food sensitivity tests and so forth. But anyway, I don't know how I lost it, but I somehow lost this thing where I used to spend hours just being with space, flying through space. And I got it back. And I got it back through scientific exploration of the self, of And this is the Vedanta thing. A lot of people have been asking me because I keep mentioning Vedanta. And Vedanta helped me get this back. And so it's like being that child again, spending hours. Except for now, it's not early in the morning and it's not shift nurse, but it's like almost all day long without pause. This feeling of just being in space, space itself. And you know, Thales, who's considered the first philosopher and the first science, he said, Megaston topos hapantagar kori, which means space is ultimate because it contains all things. And so if something is eternal, it must be space itself. And we are all in and of space at some level. And this is not difficult. This is not difficult to understand, even though it is at the same time. But if you can tap into this, and memory, I believe, is one of the ways to do it. If you can tap into this, you can understand that space really is ultimate because it contains all things, and you are where that space is contained. Where else is it? Look, if you go like this, you'll see your hands, right? And your hands will be seen by you, but it will also be seen by the space in which you are perceiving your hands. And we are all connected by that space. And if you get into Vedanta and self-inquiry and sort of stuff like this, it's called the science of the self sometimes. It's not a religion. It's not a philosophy as such. It has philosophical elements, and maybe some people bring a spiritual guru, la-di-da thing to it. But it's not necessary. It's just a simple thing. Now, the Sanskrit I've memorized, not for spiritual reasons as such, and I haven't memorized that much Sanskrit, but yesterday I did a quick little live, and I was rolling a coin, and I gave some things. So it's Chitameva Mahadosham, Chitameva Hi Balakala, Chitameva Mahatmayam, Chitameva Mahanasat. And what that means is, how do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? And this is a test of the nonsense going on in the mind. And anybody can learn this question. You don't even have to do it in Sanskrit, right? There's an argument why you should, but it doesn't matter. Even in English, it's useful. How do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? And then you get at that space inside of you, and you actually see, whoa, these thoughts are behaving in way X. And then you say, are they useful? And sometimes they are useful, because usually my thoughts are about you and how I can help you improve your memory and how that I can do it under the conditions that we have on the internet and the market and paying rent and, keeping healthy and yada, yada, yada. Those are useful thoughts. They absolutely are. But then there's sometimes thoughts of fear, and there's sometimes thoughts of scarcity and lack. But when you ask that question and you look inside, are those thoughts useful? Well, no, they're not. They're not useful at all. And in fact, they are in complete ignorance and denial of what one really is, which is infinite space, right? Megastan topos hapantagar kori. Space is ultimate because it contains all things, and each and every one of us is that space. And if you can just tap into your memory, you'll have a better sense of that. Because even if you sometimes make mistakes with the memory techniques, the memory is always there for you, unless it gets damaged through chemical means or car accidents and all that sort of stuff. And even then, there are miraculous stories of repair from people who have used memory techniques. And so this Vedanta stuff, memorizing Sanskrit and so on, is so powerful because it is a brain exercise that reminds you that this is the only moment. This is the moment right now. This is the one that's happening, right? And the more you're connected to that and you're not getting washed away by all these thoughts that are useless, the more your thoughts become very, very useful. And you can remind yourself through a simple question just how useful they are and stay connected with that being, that oneness, that wholeness. So read Andrew Newberg's How Enlightenment Changes Your Brain. And you don't get caught up in the word enlightenment. James Schwartz says something very powerful and profound, which is that if you ever think you're enlightened, you better hang your head in shame. Give your head a shake, because you were always enlightened. You were always exactly what you are. Right? You're always becoming. Well, he doesn't say this, but this is in the Bible. It's in the book of Exodus, right? What does Abba mean? It means you, or it is, I'm becoming that which I will become, right? Adonai has this to say. And really, you are becoming that which you will become. This is what in ancient Greek was aletheia, which is a word for truth. But it's a really weird word for truth because it means unhiding, unhiddenness, casting light on what was already there. You just didn't see it, right? And we are all this thing. And memory is the path to this. This is the path. And anyway, that's why I'm memorizing these Sanskrit things, because they're powerful questions. And the next one is, just how real are my thoughts? And when you ask that question and you really think about what real means, they're not real at all, right? Because they're just moving and they're changing and they're constantly changing. But what isn't changing is the thing that is perceiving those thoughts, if I just can pay attention to that. And then the next question that I've memorized in Sanskrit has to do with, what is the value? Do these thoughts have value? And, at some points I think they do, but at other points they obviously have zero value, right? But what thoughts are the ones that have value? Well, how about the question, do these thoughts have value? That obviously has value, because it's a great question to be asking. And then dismissing the ones that don't have value and really thinking deeper and working deeper with the ones that don't. Now, what thoughts have value above all? Well, for example, the Sanskrit for that is, I sort of have to sing it a little bit here, but it's Chittam Shunyam Na Sandeha Brahma Eva Sakalam Jagat Ameva Hi Chaitanyam Ameva Hi Nirgunam. That's the Sanskrit for that. Now, do my thoughts have value? Well, that thought has value because it helps me remember that some thoughts have no value and others do. So there are thoughts that have value. Clearly, that one reminds me of which thoughts are more valuable, such as that question, right? It's great. So I highly recommend it. It's really cool stuff. And anything you memorize that you can just ask yourself, it's almost Vedanta and memory techniques are almost the same thing, because you're just asking yourself, what was there? What was in that space, right? That memory palace that I created. What was happening there? And then you get it back because you got these little images there, and then you decode them, right? And this goes back to Dee Dee's question from before. You decode them, and then you get to ask yourself, well, why didn't that work? Or what was it about that did work, right? And then just like miracles of memory just unfold, left, right, center, forward, backwards, diagonal, and so forth. Because now you're in the game and you can optimize the process every ounce of the way. So this is not theory. This is practice. This is absolutely the most powerful thing in the world. Christian asks, where are these Vedanta Sanskrit chants at? I was going to ask you where yours are from too, because you did that great video there with the chants. So please let me know. These I got, well, they're from the Ribhu Gita, but I'm not getting them directly from the Ribhu Gita. I'm getting them from Gary Weber's Evolving Beyond Thought. They're at the back. I can't necessarily recommend starting with Evolving Beyond Thought. I would start with Gary Weber's Happiness Beyond Thought. Man, I'm going to have 7 books on my webinar. Because Happiness Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought are really powerful books. Peggy says, it's amazing to watch some of your earlier videos and how your production has changed up to now. Enjoy it all. Well, thank you, Peggy. Yeah, like some of them are rough, but one of the things I'm so blessed with is that all of them are true. I mean, I've had to delete very, very few of them because of quality issues. The knowledge is there. And the problem is, yeah, there are some times when I wasn't as good on video, but I just kept on practicing video. But at the same time, consumption preferences have changed. Everybody needs everything in 2 seconds or they're out of there, which is not true. This is not true. When I've had 72 people on my, and I see the statistics, we can see the stats. It's amazing what the internet is. We can see exactly how many people have stayed on for how long, when they ditched, and so forth. We can even, have an email go out if you stayed for 2 minutes longer than the next guy and get a different email. Unbelievable. I don't do all those shenanigans because I don't need to, but it can be done. And maybe in the future I will need to, because consumption preferences are so different. I can tell you this, though. I am devoted to figuring out, to the best of my powers, what is going to get you to get these results, and figure out what we can do with the technology in ways that are not going to be on the poisonous side of our little pharmacon here, to help the most people figure out who they are and what is their consumption preference, what can they work with to stretch their attention span. It may be that we do some surveys and so forth. All I care about is that it is based on the truth, and there's always some experimentation, scientific experimentation, in figuring out what we can do with the technology and the software, break some eggshells here and there and so forth. But as long as it's premised on the actual truth, we can figure it out and we can help people better, because there may be ways with like surveys and stuff where we can figure out where you're at now and then what exactly would be the better thing for you to start with. Even though there's an argument to be made that the generic memory training, as I have already created it, can be improved. Of course, all things can be, but is still so solid and durable and has lasted how long it's lasted, precisely because it's premised on the truth and is the means for you to find yourself where you are at anyway. So I don't know how to solve the puzzle. I work on it all the time. You have no idea how many hours I've spent with educational consultants. The problem with these educational consultants is that they don't use memory techniques, and then the memory consultants, or the people who do use memory techniques, they have lots of egos a lot of the time. And so we don't necessarily get to play the games that I would like to play because we can't agree on this or that technique. Now, that's not universally true, or pedagogical point or whatever. It's not universally true. There's been some great helpers who get this. They understand that it's not about the technique, it's about the student. And that's what the magnetic memory method has always been about from the very beginning. And it's been an incredible success because it's premised on the truth, and it's not trying to jerk anybody's chain. It's just saying that this works, and it works for a reason if you will submit yourself to taking some steps, asking the right questions about the steps, reconfiguring what you're doing to figure out what needs to be changed along that way relative to your situation. And then if you need additional practice, then this is the practice that you would probably do in order to get there. This is the truth. This is what is always going to be the truth. It's what always was the truth. No brain implants are going to change this. Brain implants are only going to invite disease and infection and electrical shocks. And you want Google to have implants in your head? They're already deep inside of us enough as it is. So the time to train your memory is now, right now, and make sure you're on this webinar, because it's not just about your memory. It's about your discipline. It's about your consistency, and it's about showing up to you and figuring out who you are in this mix and knowing that you are the self. You already are enlightened, so to speak. You already have all the tools and resources that you need as such to get started, to get going. And for whatever reason, the great unified field has created all kinds of tests and conditions for how it is you're going to invest in yourself in order to get the training that you need and so forth. There's all these bizarre mechanisms. I don't understand why they have to be there. Obviously, communism wasn't the answer. Who knows what's coming to replace our political systems or evolve our political systems or whatever. I think most people don't understand capitalism, so anybody who's complaining about capitalism doesn't really understand that it's capitalisms, and there's no market. There are only markets, and you got to read DeLanda. I was very, very, very lucky to have had Manuel DeLanda as a professor. He helped give my head a shake. I was in the Plato clouds. I mean, I love Plato. I'm not going to frown on Plato for any second. But in terms of understanding how the world most likely really works, you couldn't do better than understanding DeLanda. And he writes very, very clearly about very difficult concepts in philosophy, particularly the Deleuzian strand of philosophy, which, to tell you the truth, I don't know if DeLanda is just saying what he wants Deleuze to say, but in any case, it's still pretty good. And philosophers do have that habit of reshaping others, and maybe it's not exactly what those others said. But if you get this, if you get the stuff about territorialization and deterritorialization, and if you understand emergent properties and all this weird and wonderful stuff in philosophy, then you would not really complain about whatever's happening with quote unquote capitalism, you would understand that it is part of an evolutionary process, and it's probably the best thing that we have. And you would know that there are capitalisms, and it's not really ever an ism anyway. It's just a term that is used to describe an evolutionary process that has gained its footing in the world because of the survival of the fittest. So if humans and species have survival of the fittest, so too do markets. And so too do the means of exchange by which the fittest become the fittest. And so anything that is used by things that become fitter, it in and of themselves will become fitter. So whining and crying and complaining about the status quo is really the way to be ignored by the status quo and churned out. And the more you understand about these things that I've been talking about, Vedanta and so forth, I'm quite confident you will begin to see that all things that come into existence will be destroyed. They will be destroyed by virtue of having come into existence, except for that which is the unifying field itself, which you can tap into right now. Memory is a way to do it. Timothy says, "You inspire me to continue improving my memory and thus my life, especially when others think I'm wasting my time. I don't believe I am. I know and believe the MMM works." Thank you, Timothy. Yeah, you're going to find flack from other people. You would find flack from other people even if you weren't using the magnetic memory method. There are people who just don't get it. They don't get it. They're not on the path. They're never going to be. I strive to ignore what some others take as a depressing fact. They think it's a fact. I don't think it's a fact, actually. I might one day write my own book of philosophy. It has always been either the eternal present or the omega point. Those are the two titles that if somebody goes and takes those titles, that's fine. Maybe there are already books with those titles. I don't care. I'll come up with something else. But one of the things about the omega point is that there's no singularity coming. I don't believe that the singularity is coming. That's only ignorance. We're already in the singularity. This is the singularity. This is the omega point. We're here right now. That's why the other title of my book of philosophy, if I ever, waste the time writing a book of philosophy, because here's my philosophy right now, the eternal present. It always has been. I never really saw it through the lens of Vedanta before, but then I discovered it, started to memorize that Sanskrit, bang presto, here we go. These guys have been talking about it for thousands of years before Plato, or Socrates, I meant Plato, set pen to paper or set stone to rock or chisel or whatever to tablet. And even though I'm not a Bible reading person as such, I did do the Bible, or a Bible believing person, better said. It is said in Exodus, I am becoming that which I will become. And this is happening now, right? And it was happening then, and it's happening now. It's going to happen in the future. Whatever is becoming is the thing that will become. And so you're either in your memory or you're not. But a lot of people believe, including Gary Weber, as we have discussed in a correspondence between ourselves, I often cite the 80-20 rule, and he says no, in the Upanishads or in the Bhagavad Gita, I don't know, I haven't read it, I haven't seen it for myself, but he said it's not 80-20, it's 1999. And you could let yourself be discouraged by that and say, well, if only 1 out of 999 people I teach are ever going to get results, then you might as well give up. But I don't. I actually have way more results than that. Heck, there's more than that people here today. So I don't know how that all pans out. But at the end of the day, I'll never forget when I was in my 3rd year as a teaching assistant for a professor, like a professor assistant or whatever you call it, TA, teaching assistant, at the university. The professor got up at the beginning of the day. There's 550 people, some odd, in this lecture hall, and said, the majority of you aren't going to be here by the first exam period. You're all going to fail and drop out, right? The majority of you. And I was just like, what the hell is this person saying? How does she know that? How does she know which ones of them are going to be this way? And so on. What an ignorant and destructive thing to say to human beings, to students, beautiful, precious people. Even if it is true, which it turned out, I watched the lecture hall dwindling over the year. I saw my own students in my tutorials dwindling over the year. No matter what you do, retention is what retention is. But man, What a depressing mindset, and what a depressing thing to hear if you're a student, that you might be one of the majority who drops out. And I don't even see, we don't even know what's going to happen to those people. They might drop out of university, but they might also drop out of university and then go start a business enterprise that changes the entire world, right? And maybe they won't because they heard this discouraging, ignorant professor say these things. I believe in each and every single person that I ever have contact with through this means or any other, that you not only can be the best possible person you want to be, you already are, right? Who else could you be? This is now. You are becoming who you will become. And there's this extraordinary debate about free will and so forth. And ultimately, I think there is no free will. But there is wind that can blow you in the right direction. And when you get on that right direction, man, you keep going and you figure out whatever it is you need to keep that wind going and going and going and going, because there might not be free will as such, but there is definitely inhalation of good air. And then you can start to create a rhythm and be part of your own wind in your sails and say, that wind really helped me. How can I get some more? Right? And we're going to talk about this on the webinar, exactly how you can get some more from that source. Because when you get it, you can go and go and go and go, and it never has to stop. You grow and grow and grow. And it's there. It's there for all people. It's there for all people. I do not believe for a second that there's anybody who cannot become the best possible version of themselves, because you are always becoming what you will become, and you can be part of the process. You can intervene. Sometimes the woo-woo people call it the gap, getting in the gap. Maybe it's not so woo-woo after all. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it is very good to be on the journey, and you're all here on the journey, and I really appreciate that. The webinars are even more better because of all the slideshows we can do, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to be able to also give some PDF and maybe some little bonuses that I'm not mentioning now today as well. We'll see. It's just wonderful, though, to be able to do this work and to be doing it premised on such an ancient tradition. And now that I know about the Vedanta tradition, I don't know how I escaped its notice for so long. But now that we have it, it's like incredible that it's so similar to the memory training. And in fact, you can use it to improve your memory even without memory techniques like Kirtan Kriya. There's good research that just sata nama will change your brain structures in such a way that you'll actually have a memory improvement, right? It won't be the memory improvement that comes from memory training, but it will get you back on your feet. And see, this is that sort of thing where I believe that maybe if there isn't free will, there is still the possibility to make change. And I call it the speed of implementation principle, which I can't say that I created that term. That's from Dan Sullivan, but I call it that based on Dan Sullivan. By the way, always respect your teachers. When you know, and sometimes life goes fast and you forget, or you're in the moment and you don't cite your references, but when you got something from somewhere, one of the karma yoga things that you can do in life is make sure you always respect your teacher by letting you know where you learned something from. So I do as much as I can to always catch myself and let you know where I heard things. So speed of implementation, I heard from Dan Sullivan. I have no idea if he made it up or not. But in any case, when you hear a recommendation, you got to jump on it. You've got to get started, and you just take action like now. So I'm inviting you on this webinar. I'm going to give you lots of recommendations so you have things to pick and choose, but you can make a difference in your life if you take action and you follow that speed of implementation rule, which is basically you've got to do it now. And Christian and I, we had this sort of thing where I made this juggling video. Next thing you know, he's making a juggling video. Then I responded, he responded, and now this response is going. I don't know how long I can maintain the chain myself given what I'm doing, but I want to keep pushing it for as long as possible in the sense of, can we get others involved and so forth? And you know what? If not this time, maybe the next time. But it's really, really important to jump on these things and to blow on the fire. And every person can. Every person can. So one thing you can do right now, just book your spot on this webinar at magneticmarymethod.com/DC. And the link is down below. It'll be in the replay. And let's see who else we have chats here. Boo Boo Bear says, thank you, sir. Timothy says, thanks for the advice and encouragement. And Emerson says, question, what is the best way to present memory methods to a group of people and present these ideas without intimidating people? Well, Emerson, that's a great question. Just so you know, there is something of a resource like this, but it doesn't answer this specific question. But there is something like that in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind. But for now, I have to think about it a little bit more. But it's a very good question for one reason, and it's one that I've always been very concerned about and sensitive to, and tried to figure out in the best possible way. Is that when I've been to memory trainings and watched them on YouTube and stuff like that, a guy, he'll be there, typically a guy. I wish there were more women memory trainers. Christine Stinger and Christiane Stinger, sorry, and um, Lynn Kelly. Those are the only ones that come to mind that where I've actually read their books. There may be more, but actually, like memory, and even then, they're not like really doing that many live memory trainings. I've never seen either of them do live memory trainings. But it'd be great if there were more women. Um, uh, Same thing in magic. But anyway, the thing is that they often get up there and they put a blindfold on, or they stand somewhere where they can't see this giant list of numbers behind them, and then they recite numbers for 5 minutes. Now, who the hell can make a connection between their life and reciting numbers? You might be wowed and amazed, but big deal, right? I think the thing to do if you're going to do it is do the names of people, and typically if I'm going to do a memory demonstration, that's what I do is names. But I don't do it as like, okay, here comes the big memory demonstration. So to give you an example, we did a meetup for Thinkific here in Brisbane not too long ago, and I had everybody introduce themselves around the table, and then I do it in a variety of ways, but then I did a second round. It was something like this. I did a second round, and then I just said Marnie or Rhonda, and there was another guy named Ross that was there, Martin, Tabitha was his wife. I still remember these names. This is now 2-3 weeks ago. But I asked them each to say an additional thing about their superpowers that they have in business, and what they're struggling with, and what they can offer the Thinkific community. And then at the end, I introduced myself, and I said, my superpower is robbing you of the ability to introduce yourself by name. Yeah, that's how it worked. I remember I met them all individually first. I memorized their names. Then when I was going around, I asked them all by name to to remember or to say to introduce themselves. But I actually didn't let them introduce themselves by name. So they often repeated what their name was. Yes, my name is Ross or whatever. And not all of them actually knew that I do what I do with memory. But at the end, when I introduced myself, I said, okay, you've all said what your superpower is. You said what you can contribute and what help you need with at this little business meeting. But my superpower is robbing you of your ability to introduce yourself by name. And I said, I don't know if you noticed, but I recalled all of your names. And I said, who else here can do that? Can anybody else do that? And they said, no, nobody could, which is typical. And I said, well, that's what I do. I teach people to be able to do that, and to be able to do it reliably without fear, and to be relaxed and just have fun with their memory. And they can do it with languages. They can do it with numbers. They can do it with whatever. So that may be something for you, Emerson's. But you got to think about what the group is and what the context is. But one of the reasons why I do it that way is I don't want to frustrate people. I don't want people to think that there's no relationship between what I can do in my memory stunt and what they need to get done, and what will really help them with information that's actually going to improve their life. And this is very, very important. And I think that it's a problem in the memory world. It's because these guys go and, it's great. They do some really great stuff. It's great demonstrations. It's great proof and so forth. But it's also just like, what the heck does any of that have to do with me and my life, right? You've been be asking yourself that, right? And it's like, it's hard for a lot of people to connect to it. So remember that pharmacy, the pharmacon concept, right? Everything that has a cure has some poison in it, and every poison has, or not every, but many poisons also contain the cure if they're applied correctly. So I just be very sensitive to who the people are. If you're going to demonstrate it, then you want to demonstrate it in a way that they can relate with at some level, which is why I prefer names. But, if I was at a poetry meeting, then it would be some poetry, which, may or may not make sense to them because they'd be like, yeah, I remember poetry too, and I did it the hard way or whatever. So you got to think about the context, and then what's really going to help the people, what's really going to serve them. That's what matters. And that is not, there's no blanket one answer fits all sort of thing. You got to think about it. That like all things, it might require getting out a piece of paper, doing some analysis and getting ideas, maybe mind map it and figure out, that will be it. So if it's in a like a professional context, then you might say, hey, there are all these codes that we all have to abide by. How many of you know these all off by heart, right? And then you would say, nobody. Yeah, well, actually, I do. And then you close the page and you say, could you confirm that I have no listening devices in my ears? Could you confirm that I cannot actually see this anywhere in the room? Could you confirm and get everybody involved, like almost like a magic show, right? Except for it's real magic, memory magic, and it's beautiful. And then you just have these conditions put in place, and then you get someone way across the room to have this guide filled with all the codes in your profession or whatever. And then you just start to say, at the top of the page, you will see ZY47 code, blah, 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 pertaining to X. And then you just, as long as you think that their attention span can tolerate it, you just keep on going until that you've sufficiently demonstrated that you're not faking it. And then you say, who here would like to be able to do that so you can save 25 minutes every day with not looking up that stuff, right? Just bop it off the top of your memory and in a way that makes your brain healthy because it's great brain exercise. That's something like that. Would be probably pretty cool. But you got to think about it in the context. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. And Emerson, there's another resource about that in the mastermind. Christian says the first I did was on an Egyptian stele, and the second is the Jayatri mantra. Okay, I'll check those out. And Christian says it's exciting to inspire each other and make a difference. Excellent. Yeah, well, it is, and I'm very inspired. So thank you again. And thank you all, everybody, for being here today. I'm going to go and have some lunchy lunch, munchy, munchy, munch, and then I have some meetings, and it's going to be a wild and wonderful adventure as always. I really appreciate everybody being here. I look forward to seeing you on this webinar at magneticmarymethod.com/DC. The 5 books that have helped me the most with discipline and consistency. And I would really, really love to have any questions that you have around discipline and consistency and any descriptions of specific struggle, because there may be clues in those descriptions that can be used to make the webinar even better than what I already planned. And we're putting together now. So if you're able to join us, that would be great. If you're watching the replay, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and we'll see you soon on the Magnetic Mary Method blog over at magneticmarymethod.com, and again on this webinar at magneticmarymethod.com/DC. So much love to all, and until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.